Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 27th of May. Today, Phillip Schofield quits ITV after admitting to having an affair with a young male colleague this morning. Brits have been hit by bank holiday and half-term travel chaos, with hundreds of drivers stuck in queues and flights cancelled.
Rishi Sunak is scrambling to update the government's approach to regulating artificial intelligence amid warnings that the industry poses an existential risk to humanity. And the richest game in world football sees Coventry and Luton meet today at Wembley for a place in the Premier League.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
It's a difficult one today if you're going out and about, because all this travel chaos which is happening is just extraordinary.
It really is. Do you see Liz Kershaw's tweets?
Oh, no.
Our very own Liz Kershaw often does the papers with us. She was stuck in traffic yesterday for several hours, but she said she didn't mind because she used it as an opportunity to get a suntan in her convertible.
Oh, she has got a convertible.
She didn't mind.
She's got a fancy Jag.
Very
there
nice.
You go. But it's one of those things. What really annoys me is when people have been planning and waiting to get away, and then all this happens. It happens every time, isn't it?
It's something about this country, especially when it comes to a bank holiday. The roads are just gridlocked, aren't they? You can't get anywhere. And if you do, you need to allow the best part of half a day in order to do so.
Yeah.
I remember once going down to Cornwall on a bank holiday weekend, and it would take about 5-6 hours, and we set aside 12. We needed 10.
12?
Yeah,
10?
We needed 10 to get down there in the traffic. 10, 20.
No, it's bad, isn't it? It is bad.
Really,
so
really
if you're going away, if you're listening to us in the car, if you started that journey early, get in touch if it's safe to do so. gbviews@gbnews.com. We'd love to hear from you this morning.
Well done, yes. And perhaps you're deciding to stay in the garden because it is going to be about 24 degrees this weekend. Do let us know what your plans are for the bank holiday, the sunny bank holiday. And we're dressed like the sunshine today.
We are. And with no conferring, would you believe?
We're just connected.
We're in sync,
in our
aren't
minds. We are.
Yeah, which is terrifying for me.
Oh, no. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. We look like sunshine this morning.
Yeah, we do.
We look like the weather that we hope to have
Don't feel
this
like
weekend.
it slept through the alarm again this morning. So I don't feel like sunshine. Timmy woke me, that's the cat, and I've got my coffee, so we're ready to roll, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, there's only one big story out today. It's on the front of all of the papers. You'll have seen it all over social media last night, if that's your thing. Phillip Schofield. Now, of course, we know he'd left this morning, but was still part of the ITV family. Well, no longer. He has now quit ITV completely, with immediate effect, after admitting to having an affair with a young male colleague this morning.
Yes, the presenter has also been dropped by his talent agency, YMU, who represented him for over 35 years.
Let's talk to showbiz reporter Ellie Phillips, who joins us now. Morning to you, Ellie. Look, I mean, in some respects, this doesn't come as a massive surprise, because there had been these rumours rumbling on for a long time, but the fact that he's come out and admitted to having this affair with a much, much younger colleague whilst he was still married, or hadn't come out to his wife at least, because he's not divorced as yet, is he? But this obviously has caused a lot of upset at ITV.
Yeah, I think it's upset absolutely everybody. You mentioned his wife, Stephanie. He's also got 2 daughters. Ellie, you mentioned YMU. One of his daughters actually works for YMU as well. So there's so much going on behind the scenes here that, you know, the ripple effect of this is enormous. I've got to say that Phillip Schofield has said in his lengthy statement that he made to Daily Mail, and specifically to Katie Hind, that what he did, the relationship he had with this young man, was unwise but not illegal. He did admit to meeting the young man when he was a teenager, helping him get a job at ITV, and then said that their romantic relationship then, you know, took on after that when he was an adult working for the company and they were colleagues. But yeah, this is true. So this time last week, almost, you know, just a few hours difference really, he said that he'd agreed to step down from This Morning, but that he was going to be carrying on with a primetime show of his own, and that he would be hosting the Soap Awards, which are next weekend. He's now said that he won't be doing that. He's completely resigned from ITV altogether. He won't be doing Dancing on Ice anymore. He won't be having The Cube anymore. This primetime show that was apparently being lined up for him is no more. And also his agency has dropped him, and they've made blistering statements against him, essentially saying, integrity is at the heart of what we do. He's lied to us. And he himself admitted not only did he lie to his agents, his friends, his family, his wife, he's also said he lied to his lawyers, the public, the media, and that he really needs to, essentially take a look at himself, which is what he said in this huge statement. And then last night, ITV issued a statement as well, saying that they were deeply disappointed by the admission of deceit by Phillip Schofield, and that he'd said that that Phillip Schofield had made assurances to them that he now admits were untrue, and that they feel badly let down by him. So overall, this is everyone washing their hands of Phillip Schofield and saying, we didn't know, he lied to everyone, on him.
Ellie, look, these statements that people make when they come out with these statements, they're meant to be mitigation, aren't they? It's mea culpa, but also trying to sort of make it sound a little bit better. You touched on that one key point for me, which was he said this relationship was unwise but not illegal. Now, the not illegal part seems very odd that he's had to put that in.
It does, but to those in the industry, and actually to a lot of people now who know a little bit more about the kind of the rumours that were circulating, and, he said in this, I had to address certain things. I'm not going to state this man's name, because I don't, it's not fair on him, it's not fair on his family, which I think is actually a wise thing to do, because it isn't, it isn't his fault, this guy. But I think it's worrying because he's had to address the fact that when he did meet this young man for the first time, he was a teenager. The exact age hasn't been confirmed, but there have been speculations over what age this young man was. And then I think the other thing is that he's saying it's not illegal, but it's also about an abuse of power, because Phillip Schofield was the face of This Morning in a massive position of power. And then you've got a runner who, in the scheme of things within the scene, within how it works behind the scenes, is much lower down the rung in terms of the power. So it's about that power imbalance, I think, and about when companies have these HR policies in to avoid any HR problems. It's no work relationships. And if there are work relationships, usually both parties have to go to HR, tell them about it, sign statements, give interviews so that everyone knows it's above board. That obviously hasn't happened because this was an affair and he's admitted this was an affair. And then obviously there's the fact that there's this huge age difference. Phillip Schofield's 61 years old. We was with This Morning for 21 years. So, the youngest he could have been was 40 when he was there and when he helped to get this teenager onto the show. So there are some worrying questions, and I think that's why he specifically stated, that as much as he admits that what he did was, unwise, he states it wasn't illegal, and that is important to say.
And Ellie, you're right that there are questions now being asked, and probably the biggest one this morning is what ITV knew and when.
Yeah, and it's not just ITV as well. I think obviously a lot of people are asking, what did Holly know? And I think you have to look at what's happened over the past few weeks. Behind the scenes, the reports that came out alleging that Holly Willoughby's alleged feud with Phillip Schofield, which is the reason that he stepped down, was due to things including the fact that apparently she wasn't aware of all this stuff that was going to come out about his brother Timothy, who just over a week ago was convicted and sentenced to 12 years after being convicted of 11 child sex offences, and that she says, according to all these rumours that were circulating, these reports in the media, that she wasn't aware of that. She wasn't made aware of that by Phillip, which contradicts what we know about the pair being so close, holidaying together with families, being each other's rock. You've got to remember when Phillip Schofield came out publicly in 2020, it was Holly Willoughby that sat with him on the couch saying, I know how difficult it's been for you, I'm here for you. And that is not what he's getting from her now, from ITV in general. There isn't that support. You've got to think about how they handled his departure from This Morning. On Monday, it was a 30-second farewell with a few pictures flown up. There wasn't a highlight to best bit, a gushing farewell statement. It was very short, very brief, very much much. We are cutting ties with you. But I do really want to reiterate as well to a lot of people watching to know that when it comes to who knew what at ITV, a lot of the people behind the scenes on This Morning who were there when this young man was working there won't be working there now. So I think it's important not to condemn everyone with a stroke of a brush, saying, well, if you work there, you had first-hand knowledge of what was going on, because that won't be the case. And if he himself is saying that he lied to colleagues, to friends, to everyone, then I think it is important to be aware that, a lot of people at ITV, This Morning in particular, won't have known.
And Ellie, what do you think this will mean for Holly Willoughby going forward? Because her and Philip were very, very close, not just professionally, but personally as well. I mean, their families used to holiday together, didn't they? And she's gone on this early half-term break, but she is meant to be back next Monday, isn't she? Do you think that will still be the case?
Yeah, I do. I think I can't see them deviating from that. They won't like the fact that, they've had to change all their plans. Things have gone up in the air. And Holly is essentially what they call their golden girl. They absolutely adore Holly Willoughby at ITV. And she is really good in terms of on screen. She's very professional. Live TV is a very, very difficult job to do. We've had Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary do the majority of last week at This Morning and seeing how they work with each other. But it has all been said, and rumours behind the scenes are Holly will be coming back. Currently, it's Alison Hammond who's tipped to permanently co-host with her moving forward. And I also want to mention as well that one interesting thing about Philip's statement, which does ask more questions and I think possibly might leave Holly a bit annoyed, is that he specifically states that the reason he left This Morning, or that, essentially he was sacked from This Morning, was unrelated to this affair that he had with a young runner, a previous affair that is no longer carried on. And so that leaves people saying, OK, well, why did you leave then if it wasn't for this? What else is going on? What else is there to come? What else is going to be revealed that's completely unrelated? And then that means people are looking at Holly saying, OK, so if it wasn't this, what feud was there? What's going on between you two? So it does leave people asking a lot more questions as well, which is something that we just have to wait and see how Holly will address. I can't see her audibly addressing this. I can imagine that the way that when he left This Morning, she issued a short statement. I can see that being the way forward for her now as well. The very controlled statement put out, an attempt to put it to bed and move on from it.
OK, Ellie Phillips, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on what is the biggest story of today. It's in front of all of the newspapers this morning. And as Stephen said, it broke last night on social media and it was a very big story within minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not convinced that Holly is going to walk away from this unscathed. And I'm not saying that that's fair. I don't know. But does it damage the whole brand? Because they've been so linked together. Yeah. Does it damage the whole brand, as it were?
I mean, she's been trying to distance herself, hasn't she? She came out with that very short statement, something like, thanks for getting me to where I am, thanks for your experience and knowledge, and the sofa won't be the same without you. She's been trying to do that, but can you? I mean, if you've worked with someone for 14 years side by side, you do Dancing on Ice together and This Morning, two prime time ITV shows, can she then have a career as an independent?
I don't. Well, she could. She could, but whether on This Morning.
On This Morning.
I don't know.
Especially when there's so many good, talented people.
And because this is
step in.
Because this is getting toxic, like properly toxic now.
Yeah, and that's what Philip said in his initial statement, didn't he? He said, I want to protect the show I love because the show is bigger than him. But this story is bigger than the show at the moment.
Yeah.
And they will not like that at ITV.
No, well, they don't. Anyway, if you've... I was going to say, if you've got any views, I mean, do send your thoughts through. I'm not sure how many of them we're going to be able to read out. Just bear that in mind, because I don't know. It's a legally tricky one.
It is.
So we've got to be a little bit careful. But still, send them through. We'll have a look. But we may not be able to read that many of them out. We'll just have to see what you say.
This is a pre-warning.
Yeah. GBviews at gbnews.com. Got to tread a little bit carefully on this one. Because we don't want to end up in court.
No, would rather not.
No, thank you.
Now, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called accusations that he broke further COVID-19 lockdown rules a load of absolute nonsense. Mr Johnson would not say who he believes is trying to stitch him up. He's previously claimed he appears to be the victim of a politically motivated plot.
The electric bike ridden by two teenagers before they were killed in a crash was an early birthday present. 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans were killed in Cardiff riding an e-bike. Following a community vigil for the pair yesterday, Harvey's aunt said he would have turned 16 next week. The police watchdog is investigating after footage emerged showing a police van following the teens just before their death.
And the warm weather is set to continue over this bank holiday weekend, with highs of 24 degrees possible in southwest Wales and around the Bristol Channel today and tomorrow. The Met Office says the forecast will continue into next week. The highest temperature in the UK yesterday was in Bainbridge, where it reached 22.6 degrees. Cardiff hit 23.4 degrees on Monday. That's the highest temperature so far this year.
Now, what I don't understand, because you're very excited about the hot weather.
Oh, I love it.
But are you a sunbather? Because you are plastered in sunscreen, aren't you?
I thought you were about to say something else then.
Yeah.
Fake tan.
Fake tan.
No, I don't actually sunbathe.
No.
Very good question. I don't know, because I don't want to get wrinkles.
Oh,
It's very damaging to your sun.
bit too late for me for wrinkles.
Stop, you've got none.
Oh, please.
Oh, would you stop?
Please.
So harsh
No,
on
I
himself.
don't mind a few wrinkles. It's a sign of
Enjoying
of
life.
something. I don't know what it is.
Being
It's a sign of
distinguished.
something. You can't get to a good old age and not have wrinkles, can you?
No.
Unless you've had a lot of work done.
Prevention is key, so I do try and be very, very sensible in the sun. But there's something, it makes me feel really happy when the sun's out.
Yeah.
It's got that. Well, vitamin D is meant to be very good for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
But even just walking home yesterday with the sun on my face, I was like, this is wonderful.
This is nice.
Oh, I think
Does
I
feel
should live in a
lovely.
hotter climate, really, because it doesn't happen very often in this country, does
No,
it?
well, you don't need to go to a hotter climate at the moment. It's getting warmer over here. Hooray.
It's true.
Mind you, bad news for those of us looking for an early summer escape, if you need to at the moment. Well, it's all been booked in before we knew what the weather was going
half-term,
to do.
isn't it? Yeah, no.
Brits have been hit by half-term travel chaos, with hundreds of drivers, again, stuck in queues at the port of Dover, and flights have been cancelled.
Well, let's go now to the Chief Executive at the Business Travel Association, Clive Ratton. Really good to see you this morning, Clive. So millions of people have been facing holiday hell, haven't they, trying to head off for the half-term break?
Good morning, Ellie and Stephen. Good to be here. And yeah, it's a bank holiday, so of course it's busy, and it always is. And I'm not sure, chaos is the right word, that we seem to overuse it. It is just a really busy bank holiday weekend, and obviously half term, as you just mentioned, and people are going away on holiday, and it's just the volume that is out there. And our infrastructure sometimes does struggle a little bit, but most people are getting away pretty straightforwardly with some queues, because it is a longer journey time than it would be on a Tuesday afternoon in November.
So, for anyone who's heading off today, which a lot of people will be doing, what's the best way around it? Is it just a case of give yourself a bit more time?
It simply is that, Stephen. It is give yourself plenty of time so you don't get stressed and relax. Get to the airport 3 hours before. Always stay, if you can, check in online before you get there, so you've got your boarding passes ready, and go to the bag drop, and make sure you get through to airside as quickly as you can and go through security. And once you get through there, sit down and relax, and it's part of your holiday and your journey. And similarly on the roads, if you're going down to the ports, is just give yourself that plenty of time. Expect a bit of delay, and if you're mentally prepared, then it never seems quite so bad, because everybody's doing the same thing.
Clive, yesterday I think was the busiest day for takeoffs so far this year. Something like 3,000 flights were taking off yesterday. How much of this do you think is pent-up demand of people? We didn't get to go away on foreign holidays for the best part of 3 years, really, during the pandemic, and now people really want to get away and jet off on a holiday.
Yeah, they actually do. The recovery since the pandemic of people wanting to get away has been, much faster than I think many people predicted, but it just shows that we really do value our holidays massively, and of course there are people travelling for business and going off to see family and friends too. And the one thing people are not putting to the back burner at the moment is their chance to get away and travel around the world. So it's really encouraging for our industry because it's had a really difficult few years, but great for the people to get back out and start enjoying what they like to do, which is going to some sunshine if that's their choice, or going to do other things.
The airlines, in some respects, making this slightly more difficult, because there do seem to be these situations where, when things are getting a little bit behind schedule, the airlines cancel flights to try and get things back on track.
Yeah, well, obviously there were some issues at Heathrow over the last couple of days, but other airports around the UK, didn't have that issue. It was specific, but airlines have a very clear plan when there are delays around minimising disruption, although it doesn't seem like that for those people that are caught up in the cancellation of the flights. But it's about getting the schedule stable as quickly as possible. So you take some flights out, and the majority of the flights that were cancelled over the last couple of days at Heathrow were short haul. And remember, when you talk about numbers, there's an outbound flight and an inbound flight, so they're not all ex-UK. And they try and choose those flights that have multi-rotations on the day so they can protect passengers. But clearly, it still creates a lot of frustration and upset for those that are caught up in it. But the best way of getting the schedule back quickly for the masses is to make those cancellations appropriately.
Clive, really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. And if you're heading away today, or you're on your way or anything else, and it's safe to do so, get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com.
And good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, do you know what? It's interesting because Clive said, it's not as bad as everyone says.
Oh, no,
as long as you plan and give yourself lots of time, you must have known when you booked for this time of year that it is going to be problematic.
Yeah, it makes me nervous though. If you know you're heading off on a bank holiday, you know you're going to run into chaos. I mean, as Clive just said, it's our infrastructure. Really, it does struggle, doesn't it, when we all decide to head off at the same time. But also, we didn't get to touch upon there Dover. If you're heading down to Dover, that could be a very, very long queue. So do give yourself plenty of time. If you're heading over to France, which would be lovely.
It would be nice.
This weekend, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. Sorry, I'm just distracted because you've got Twitter up on your... and there's...
Well, I'll take that off, yeah. Don't know what that is.
I don't know, but it's...
It's a work computer.
It's a work computer.
Yeah.
I don't think... It's people frolicking in the pool.
Yeah, no, I didn't search that. I don't know how that came up.
I don't know how to look for a minute. Anyway.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
I'm not sure what that was.
Anyway, I'll tell you what that could have been, because they're coming up on your feed, so that's some sort of algorithm, or what we tend to call artificial intelligence, isn't it? On your Twitter feed, which is slightly disturbing.
Very good.
The Prime Minister, thank you, is working on creating an international treaty for artificial intelligence, which could lead potentially to a global regulator.
Yes, it comes just days after Rishi Sunak met with American big tech leaders, where they discussed the risks that AI poses for disinformation.
Well, Georgia Gilhoyle from Young Voices joins us now. Morning to you. What do you make of this, Georgia? I mean, the fact that the PM met some really influential and important tech people just a couple of days ago, and is now launching into this. I mean, clearly this is something he's been feeling that he needs to address.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's Rishi Sunak alone that thinks this is something that needs to be regulated. I think that we've of course heard about AI for years and how its advances are going to change society immeasurably, including industry and what we do online, and possibly getting rid of lots of jobs that it's going to outcompete, basically. And I think that we've seen it grow immeasurably in the past year. We have people regularly using chatbots, the Snapchat one in particular, and Ask AI has become a meme, but it's also something that has become an important work tool in lots of jobs. And I think that people are very sort of cautious about where this might go, given that it's grown so fast it seems like just within a few months. Of course, this is something that the experts have been working on for decades, but it's something that's, I think, only just sort of trickling down to normal people's consciousness. And I think that realistically, there does need to be regulation, because this is something that is, in many cases, imitating humans. And I think that that's something that always, in a sort of uncanny way makes people suspicious, but I think for good reason, because this could be used malevolently. It could be, of course, used for good reasons, but it could also be used in ways that governments and companies and just regular people might sort of fall victim to, depending on how it's being used.
Georgia, how much we read into the fact that 2 days ago Rishi Sunak had this meeting with American tech bosses and literally straight after he's talking about working on an international treaty and potentially a global regulator as well. It would suggest that that meeting was very enlightening to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't something he's particularly talked about a lot previously, and I think that meeting probably was quite influential. It's interesting how it's taken this meeting, as you say, for him to at least publicly address this kind of regulation. I think it kind of speaks to the fact that even though many British people, British companies and British politicians have expressed their concerns about this previously, in a way, the UK in its current situation is quite beholden to global corporate interests, especially American ones. And I think that often we sort of underestimate how important that is, even just in our politics.
Do we have to be careful that we don't tie ourselves in knots with this? Because for a lot of people, of course, they don't quite get AI or exactly what the real concerns of AI are. And so we've got to be very careful about not giving people the wrong information here, haven't we? Or not to alarm people unnecessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some kind of educational program would be useful. I think probably, hopefully, quite soon, but maybe in the next few years, we'll see this sort of enter curriculums in schools, and people will not just be learning about what AI is and what the risks and the benefits, of course, are of it. They'll probably be learning sort of how to create it and that kind of thing, especially at higher levels in universities. More a next generation learning how to create different higher forms of it, of course. I think that when it comes to something like AI, as you're saying, it's something that's been, I suppose, a feature of dystopian TV dramas and films. And I think on this issue, and of course a lot of different issues, people's opinion of it has probably walked quite a lot by that. And I think that really the government, but also the media, could probably do a better job of helping people understand it. But of course, you have the fact that it's such a fast-changing thing that people are never going to be able to understand every single aspect of it, especially as it's changing so fast. And there's so many different companies in the UK and elsewhere that are advancing it very, very quickly.
OK, Georgia, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. What do you make of it?
Thank you. I think it's very good that we're at the forefront of it. I think it's a relief to all of us that Rishi Sunak was meeting with tech bosses and getting the inside analysis from people who know it best, and then looking at an international treaty. I think if we're going to be ahead of the curve, it's good to be in the know, isn't it?
He mentioned
What do you think?
He mentioned at G7 that Britain would lead the way on AI regulation.
He did say
and we all were a bit like, well, why will we? And then, of course, this has all been planned ahead. It's clever. I just think we've got to be careful not to over-panic, because the concerns about AI are when technology actually is thinking for itself, which it doesn't do at the moment.
As you say, no such thing yet, is there?
No, AI doesn't actually exist, because it's artificial intelligence is about how a computer thinking on its own. And when that happens, the concern is that they will learn and grow much faster than humans, because they can. And that's the real concern. It's the rise of the machines and all that sort of thing. It's like Terminator, and that's a real concern.
But couldn't we get to that stage very, very quickly?
We
the
could.
Pace of development.
It's as well to be looking at it now. But Alexa is not the problem here. No, it's not down to Alexa or Siri or all that sort of thing. So we've got to be careful not to...
And we've talked a lot on this show about the benefits of AI. Just yesterday we had the glasses that enabled blind people or deaf people to have subtitles, didn't they? Deaf people, sorry, to have subtitles. So that could pave the way, especially in hospitals and in things like lecture theatres. That could be a huge, huge help. So there are many benefits to this sort of technology as well. So we shouldn't be totally alarmed, but it is good to be aware, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Let us know what you think. If you want to send us an automatically generated message,
which you can do now.
Which dictate it then to gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, is owning a detached home your idea of living the dream? If so, you're not alone. We'll tell you more in a minute. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the people's channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. And please do continue to get in touch with us this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. It's a new email. I don't know if the other one's still working.
No.
But
it's not, apparently. We're being told by someone who knows it is not working, so don't use that
use the new one.
.com. I should say, we've had Eurovision songstress Nikki French get in touch this morning.
Nice.
She represented the UK in 2000, and she's loving. She's emailed in especially to say she likes the matching yellow.
Thanks,
morning, Nikki.
Good morning to you. This was unintentional, but we're very pleased it's happened.
Yes, pot luck, because I slept through my alarm this morning, so I'd literally grabbed the first tyre, so...
But you wouldn't know it.
No, you wouldn't.
Very put together.
No.
Wonderful.
No, I was very composed as I drove down the M1 this morning. I think I was going to be late.
I was a bit worried I was going to be hosting solo this morning.
It's awful.
Watch 5:20.
Do you ever do that? Get in touch if you do that. I actually remember the alarm. I didn't sleep through it. I remember the alarm going off and turning it off and thinking to myself, I must get out of bed. If I don't get out of bed immediately this morning, it'll be a disaster. And I must have just gone back to sleep.
Isn't that really bad when your intrusive thoughts actually tell you, you know what, that's a very bad idea, and then you do it anyway?
I must have done it.
Yeah, must have done it anyway.
Awful. Hate it.
James says, you're looking fantastic this morning, you two, feeling your energy through the telly. John says, thank you both for working on the weekend. It's our daughter's birthday.
Oh.
We're planning a boat trip on the Thames from Kingston to Hampton Court and back. The weather is looking fair.
Oh, that'll be lovely in this weather, lovely. Actually. How glorious. Happy birthday to your daughter.
Yes, happy birthday.
And Peter says, is this Peter from yesterday as well? Watching you from Paphos in Cyprus this morning. It's our son's wedding day today.
Aww.
Please give Dan and Rianne
Dan and
a
Rianne?
mention.
rhymes.
It does, Rianne. I've never heard of Rianne before. Rhiannon, but not Rianne. We'll have a wonderful wedding day.
Yes.
Glorious sunshine. You'll be guaranteed sunshine over there.
Yeah, congratulations them both. I bet it looks stunning, doesn't it, Paphos? Yeah. Beautiful.
Now, despite rents, mortgages and the cost of living, of course, squeezing our wallets, the most popular type of home amongst movers, so this is if you already own a house, are detached houses, according to the latest data.
Buyers are believed to be seeking peace and quiet following the lockdown years.
Now, let's talk to property expert Christina Castellina, who joins us now. Christina, I've got to be honest, this doesn't surprise me in the slightest, because isn't it basically everyone's dream, ultimately, to sort of have a detached house and somewhere quiet in the countryside? Or is that just me?
No, I think you're right. I think we're living in an age where people have choice now because people can work from home, which has been incredible for people's lifestyles. But also, actually, I think something that's really important is that new build developers are building detached houses. So actually, you don't even need to be moving into the middle of nowhere. There's really popular towns now where you can actually, there's just rows and rows and rows of detached houses. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. So you're not totally, isolated where there's no coffee shops and you've got no bars and no restaurants. People are now getting to live, very close to a town, and they're still with a community, but, they have the detached house, the nice garden, more space. So, I think it's a great thing. If people can afford it, then why not?
I am the opposite, Stephen. It's not often that we disagree, but we're going to disagree on this, because I'm quite shocked at this. I don't know many people who can afford a detached house, and with cost of living and mortgage rates, you would think that people would be downsizing or staying in the homes that they are. It's surprising that there's a race to go to a detached home and to actually have more space and have a bigger property.
There is a caveat to this. This is not applicable for London. So there are certain areas, of course, most people in London are not going to be living in detached houses. So, of course, the cheaper areas in the UK, you will see that detached are more popular because it's more affordable. But also, this statistic is only for people that currently have a home already. So for a lot of these people, they've benefited from the rise in property prices. So they already have equity that they can carry forward. And again, if we just go back to, a lot of people are buying new builds, often the developer will actually pay the stamp duty. So there are incentives there, which perhaps, for the average person, maybe they couldn't afford a detached house, but because they're buying a new build and the developer says, you know what, I'm going to pay the £10,000, £15,000 stamp duty, it then makes it accessible to them. Obviously, going forward, for some of these people, perhaps they might be rethinking this with the interest rates. However, people are just doing the best at the time with the information they have then.
Is there a bit of snobbery in this, in that we think detached houses are better than a semi-detached or a terraced or whatever it might be?
Yes, perhaps. I think they look nice, they feel nice. So I think, most people would prefer, if they could choose, the majority would choose a detached. However, I love a real a terrace house that has loads of character, a cottagey feel. So I think, each property has its own merit, really. But if we're just looking at a whole, I think a detached house, it's nice, especially with a family. For me, I don't want everyone hearing my 2-year-old screaming. A detached house is perfect.
Yeah. Oh, Christina, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
And you.
Do you know, if I was looking for a new property or whatever, I'd want like an agent like Christina.
She's lovely, isn't she?
Because she's so friendly and helpful.
And dressed for the sunshine.
Dressed for the sunshine. That'd be great. I'd love to go.
What would you have as your next property, do you think?
I don't know. A castle.
Let's say a manor.
I don't know. See, I was saying about it being snobbery but you see, I like a detached house.
Yeah.
But
You've got a lovely home.
Yeah, but you see, I'm from the countryside where actually most of the houses are a lot of that, and a good percentage of the houses are detached because there's the space and village life and all that sort of thing. So I grew up with it, so I'm more used to it.
Well, you need to have a garden, don't you?
I need a garden.
Feel as a country boy.
Yeah, I do.
As a northerner. Yeah, let us know what you think of that. Would you be looking for a detached home as your next property? Another part of that data was that the average age of a home mover now is 39 in the UK.
So you sort of your second house sort of thing?
Your second house is 39, yes. Let us know what you make of that. I think that's quite interesting. gbviews@gbnews.com. Got to remind myself.
Yes, we've got all the papers heading away in just a second. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
It's just coming up to 6:42. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller. Good morning to you both. Really good to have you both with us this morning. Emma, should we talk about the biggest story on the front of almost all of the papers this morning? Of course, Phillip Schofield.
Yeah, it is. It's across the papers, even the serious papers. And this is just, you know, not a good situation for Phillip Schofield and those around him. I think what's coming out now is this just tissue of lies. I think that's what people are really starting to realise, not specifically whether this affair with a younger runner was, you know, if the man was of age, then there's nothing really that can be said about it. But the fact that Phillip Schofield is now coming out and saying, look, I lied to ITV, I lied to my family, I lied to my lawyers, I lied to my agents. I think people are starting to feel very uncomfortable about the past few decades of this, you know, whatever we think of him, a national institution.
Why has he come out with this, do you think? Because the one thing he made clear was that it was all legal.
Yeah,
right?
Unwise, but
legal. Yeah. The fact he's lied to his wife, yes, it's not very nice.
Private issue.
But, you know, that's what happens when people have affairs.
Yeah.
And lots of people do it.
Yeah.
So why is it so big, do you think?
Well, it's been suggested that there is more to come, that, you know, that people are slightly pushed. It's very difficult to say, I know, to discuss this. I don't know the details. But, you know, do people just come out with this kind of statement? Would he just walk away from a very, very successful career with ITV unless there was some reason? And I'm not privy to that information. But this is what we know as of now.
Yeah, but you're smirking. Be careful.
Well, I'm not privy to any information, but I do think one of the things is that
On the one hand, I'm completely uninterested in what people do in their private lives. But the issue with this is that our private lives have become a spectacle in the public arena. So there are declarations in the public arena about people's choices and decision-making. And I think there's a lack of a distinction between the private sphere, where we keep things private and personal, and public. And actually, Phillip Schofield has promoted that significantly. So in a way, this, not ordinarily, I'd be saying, well, I'm not really interested in people's private lives. If they haven't broken the law, which is something for the law to deal with, then there's nothing to do with us. But at the same time, we've had this situation where people wear their hearts on their sleeves in public and talk about their private lives. And I think particularly young people no longer have a distinction between the private sphere and the public. And if we don't have that, we don't actually have a really strong public arena or a place where we can have privacy and safety in a private sphere, and I think that's a problem.
And I think it's worth remembering that when he came out in quite an emotional, quite a no-holds-barred, interview, if we think back to that, in 2020, he was, in a way, inviting us into his, he was sharing a lot about himself, and if that was based on sort of semi-partial truths, I think then some of these questions become more valid. And staff at ITV are saying he lied point blank to everyone at every level. So there's a sense there that, really there's a lot of stuff under the surface which just was not honest.
Yeah, OK. Well, we shall wait and see what else rumbles on with that one, won't we?
Yeah.
Alan, let's have a look at The Guardian, should we? We're being told that the UK is set for a recession. We've been told this before, of course, and it didn't happen.
We have been told this before, and the front page of The Guardian is saying, is UK set for recession before the next election? Interesting headline. Although we do know that we've had severe sluggishness, we've had questions about whether people should eat or heat way before Ukraine. We know that the consequences and the damages and the harms of lockdowns and the impositions have meant that things like food prices and energy costs have been really high, and they're continuing to spiral. And now we're faced with a situation where interest rates have gone up again, twice actually in the last couple of weeks. And it looks like there'll be more. We know that Andrew Sentence is saying, who was someone who would be advising at the Bank of England, that it's folly, actually, to think that this can be prevented, because now we know the Bank of England is not actually guided or steered by politicians anymore, since Gordon Brown unhinged that relationship. But what we're seeing is...
Andrew Sentence is a controversial character in and of himself.
Indeed, but what we're seeing is now a situation where perhaps many of the things that have been done before are just being repeated. We know that also, since 2008, printing money hasn't been a resolution, and we've seen more of that in the lockdown. So now what we're faced with the situation, we've had low growth, low productivity. There were attempts to deal with that, actually, with Liz Truss, although many would argue she didn't win over the public to it. And now we're faced with the very same proposition, that interest rates are going up. It's been said that Jeremy Hunt has said, well, that's just one of those things we'll have to put up with in order to get inflation down.
It's interesting.
Farce. This is such a farce. On Tuesday night, the IMF, in the FT, the IMF was saying the UK will avoid recession. We're talking about 0.4% instead of 0.3%. The fact of the matter is, people do not feel, yes, finally, energy prices are coming down. That's not going to affect many of us over the summer. Food prices are still soaring. People do not feel that the UK is avoiding recession. They don't feel any richer. In fact, people are still struggling. It's such a kind of... How can they come out with this when we've just had this statement from the IMF saying that we'll avoid recession?
Well, I think the problem is the IMF should really butt out. Because the IMF has a litany of failures to its name.
So did the Bank of England, by the way. Absolute failure. Years of failure.
Consistently got it wrong. But we have a major, enormous issue to deal with, because this is about everyday people's lives. And we have a situation where the level of wages in the UK, the level of productivity is not significantly increased. And actually, since the 70s, we've been sluggish. And it seems like the fashionable outlook is to have limits and restrictions to growth rather than to boost productivity and wealth creation for all. And really, This is, in terms of the medium and longer term, that's the thing we need to address, and we need to get out of this, because what this really is going to mean for people is more hardship and suffering.
OK, let's quickly move on. Just briefly in the Times, Emma, because we're a bit tight this morning. Bringing more teachers in.
Yeah, it's a global search to fill our classrooms, because most of our teachers are on strike. So rules have been relaxed, so we can bring in people from countries such as Ghana, India, Singapore and Nigeria.
So that'll increase net migration.
Yeah. Places like that, exactly.
Okay.
This is a time with controversial soaring immigration figures, but we desperately need teachers in science, maths, languages, all of that. Teaching unions are really angry at this, obviously, because the government is saying, no, by the way, we can't give you pay rises. Oh, but we'll offer a £10,000 bonus to woo teachers from abroad. But then again, we need our schools to function. We need teachers to be in post to teach our children.
Wouldn't we be better just to offer £10,000 to our own teachers?
I wonder if we have the teachers in science, maths and languages. I mean, it makes sense to bring in language teachers from abroad if they're teaching other languages, and we do have historical links with these countries. So...
But with science and maths teachers in particular, it's really, really difficult, because if you're a maths graduate, you could go into teaching and be on £26,000, for example, or you can go into the city and start on a 60k grad scheme. You can see why you wouldn't go into...
Same with science. You could probably go into a lab or something like that and be getting £100,000 a year to do something really interesting. Or you could deal with snotty-nosed, beloved children of ours in schools that are beset by shortages and, you know, real budget.
No, you're selling it really well, Emma. Really well. Look, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Emma, Alan, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Now, the richest game in world football takes place today, which sees Coventry and Luton meet at Wembley for a place in the Premier League.
Yeah, why is it the richest game, you may ask, with those two teams? Well, reaching the promised land would bring in a huge injection of cash, about £170 million, as well as the chance, of course, to play against some of the world's best.
Well, our reporter Jack Carson spoke to some fans this week about the biggest domestic game in the calendar.
The city of Coventry has a rich and proud history. From the Blitz to manufacturing and, of course, its football club.
And here are the men from Coventry.
After success in the Championship this season and winning a spot in the playoffs, the Sky Blues beat Middlesbrough over 2 games to face Luton Town at Wembley for a spot in the Premier League. But for the last few years, the club hasn't had an easy ride, as Coventry fan Ian Davidson explains.
The last few years, we came out of the Premier League after 34 years. We then had 10, 11 years in the Championship, and then we got relegated. And everybody thought it was going to be a one-season tour of League One. That didn't happen. We went into things like administration. We had 10-point deductions. We ended up going down to League Two. And the recovery through Mark Robbins and the phenomenal support of the fans has just been amazing over the last 5-6 years.
Through television deals, English football has expanded into homes across the world, and Norwegian Sky Blue fan Jorg Nannestad started supporting the club thanks to his mother.
My mother, she promised that she should buy me a football shirt. 2 guys from England started importing the Admiral football shirts to Norway and had a little store in the center of Oslo. And my mother went in and she bought, as she said, the prettiest shirt in the shop, and that was Coventry. And since then, it has been Coventry. I think it will be a close race, but 1-0 Coventry.
Last year, Coventry generated £18 million from ticket sales, commercial arrangements and TV. If they go up to the Premier League, that could rise to more than £130 million. But it's not just on the Wembley pitch where Coventry could seal financial security. Sony Hull is a maritime business based in the city that recently won the King's Award for Enterprise with its ultrasonic anti-fouling system. Their environmental, social and governance director, Darren Jones, says promotion for the football club is good for business at home and abroad.
When you go to Singapore or Sweden and you say I'm from Coventry and they say, oh wow, we've seen you in the Premiership, that connection, that human connection really helps sell. Just the brand recognition of having your city associated with the Premiership, the biggest league in the world, watched by billions, is huge. So if we're looking at inward investment, even if we're just looking at visitor numbers to the city, Once it's a Premiership stadium, it really does take on an international dimension. Yes, it's been an Olympic stadium before, but it can be even more. It brings people to the city, and it brings attention to the city, and that just really helps with business.
The heights of England's top tier awaits either Coventry or Luton today, but only one can come away from Wembley with a spot in the Premier League. Jack Carson, GB News.
Are you excited?
Can't say I am, no, but I can appreciate that if you are in Coventry
or
Luton, you could be very excited today.
Yeah.
Good luck. May the best team win. We will have Coity on a little bit later, and he'll be very excited.
He'd be very excited.
Yes.
He certainly will. Sean's been in touch about AI. Oh, Sean says, we'll always be smarter than AI. Well, no, we won't, Sean. That's the worry.
That's what people are concerned about.
Because a computer can learn much faster than we can.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll surpass us within about a year.
Yeah, could happen very, very quickly, couldn't it? And that's what the concern is now. And in terms of legislation, and will we be able to keep up with it? You know, we were talking about having some sort of international treaty on it. I mean, if it's always developing, will it be able to always stay in front of technology?
But I suppose that legislation will be about somehow artificially capping intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do that before it properly kicks off.
Before it gets there.
Maureen, I bet you've had an interesting life, Maureen. She says, having worked in computing since the early 80s, wow, MS-DOS and all that, that's when it was all a different world then. AI was firstly known as KBS, Knowledge-Based Systems.
Oh,
well, there you go. That's interesting.
That is really interesting.
Thank you, Maureen.
And Peter, good morning to you, says governments need to move fast to plan transition of workforce, but AI offers us incredible opportunities for energy, education, science and health, and art and design.
It's a way to look at it, really.
Especially in the medical world, right?
Yeah, medical world, really important. Keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.com. We've got all the showbiz news and the latest on the Schofield saga coming up. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Morning, this is your latest weather update for GB News from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin, and the weather looks pretty good this weekend if you like it dry and fine. It will turn a little cooler over the next couple of days, and some of the beaches will be a little fresh, but generally we've got high pressure controlling things, bringing a lot of dry and pretty sunny weather too. Now, there is this weather front pushing into northern Scotland, so a fairly drab start to the weekend here. A little bit of rain just trickling at the moment down across the Highlands. That's tending to fizzle out as it sinks southwards, so the central belt, eastern Scotland, mostly dry, just clouding over a little. For much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells. There's a bit of a breeze on some coasts, bringing a fresher feel, and still a fairly brisk wind blowing over northern Scotland. But here, after a grey start, it may actually brighten up a bit this afternoon. Elsewhere in the sunshine, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23, 24 across parts of the Midlands and perhaps South Wales and southwest England. So feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. It'll cloud over a bit this evening over central and then southern Scotland, and we'll see more clouds spilling in across eastern parts of England overnight. But again, most places are going to have a dry night with clear spells. Just a hint of blue on the chart there. Perhaps in some rural spots, again across Scotland, temperatures may dip down close to freezing, so a bit of a chilly start on Sunday morning, but again, most places having a fine day. It will be a cloudier day, perhaps across these eastern counties of England, but even here I suspect that cloud will break up a little bit as we go through the day and we'll see sunny spells. And a brighter day over the Highlands of Scotland and the Western Isles. Notice this breeze just coming in across these eastern coastal counties of England. That is going to bring a fresher feel and generally not as warm on Sunday. Slightly lower the temperatures tomorrow, but still in the south likely to get up to 20 degrees, maybe more. Monday also set fair. Again, a little cooler perhaps, but still some sunshine for most of us. Goodbye.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing with the audience very much at the heart of it.
like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Good morning. It's stop laughing. Honestly, we try to keep up. It's 7 o'clock. It's the 27th of May, and she's laughing already.
I almost fell into you there.
Did you? Well, we're trying to bring you a bit of smiles and sunshine this morning amidst some of the more controversial news. So keep your thoughts coming through on anything you want to talk about that makes you smile. gbviews@gbnews.com. But in terms of the headlines, today Phillip Schofield quits ITV after admitting to having an affair with a young male colleague at This Morning. Brits have been hit by bank holiday and half-term travel chaos, with hundreds of drivers stuck in queues and flights cancelled.
Rishi Sunak is scrambling to update the government's approach to regulating artificial intelligence amid warnings that the industry poses an existential risk to humanity. And the richest game in world football sees Coventry and Luton meet today at Wembley for a place in the Premier League.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've been talking about houses today.
We have.
Most people, not if you're a first-time buyer, but after that, most people want a detached house. Though it depends, not if you live in London, because that's like ridiculously unaffordable. Yeah. Colin says, I'm lucky enough to live in a detached cottage in the country, surrounded by animals and nature and no people.
It's like Snow White. Nice. Sounds stunning.
Are you Snow White, Colin?
You'd like that.
Yeah, I would like that. Westy says, detached houses, no noise from neighbours. Well, it depends how... You get a lot of these detached... Well, you've got to be careful. A lot of the detached houses now, the gap between houses is like a foot.
It's like that big, isn't it?
So really, you need a mile between houses. That's
especially
the way to do
new builds. When you get onto a new housing estate, they can be really, really close together, can't they? Michael says, I went to view a so-called upmarket estate of hundreds of houses being built in stages. The houses look nice at first glance, but there's about 2 foot between the houses, parking for 1 car, no parking on the street, hardly any garden. The interior walls were weak with 0 soundproofing. I'd rather live in a 1950s council house in the country.
Yeah, build quality isn't always what it was, is it?
Well, they're throwing up so many of the new builds, aren't they? They're doing it very quickly.
And John says, why does everyone presume that everyone wants to buy their own house? We're never going to sort out the housing problem until we have a social housing project like the 1950s. Well, what was the... Actually, I don't really know what that project was. John, is that when council housing was all a really big thing? I don't know.
No. I mean, the point is, especially for a lot of the younger generation now, they will never buy their own home.
No.
Because you can't rent and spend £1,500 a month, £2,000 a month if you're in London, and save for a deposit. It's not possible unless you have very rich parents,
but you see,
which many people don't.
See, in terms of social housing, I understand how it's important, but I'm also reluctant to criticise anyone, because my grandparents, or one set of grandparents, who always lived in a council house, mum and all her siblings were brought up in the council house, and then when they had the chance to buy it, they bought it. And it was really important for them to feel like they bought their own property.
That's so nice.
Well, it is nice, but then, of course, what it ends up doing is reducing the number of council houses available.
Of course.
So it's like, it's difficult.
There was a great story in The Sun this week, actually, which just reminded me, actually.
Oh, yes.
It was a lovely lady, I think her name was Edna or something, and she's lived in the same terraced house.
Yes.
For like 104 years
It
or
was,
something.
yeah, 104.
And she bought a similar story. She'd lived in it, and her dad had rented it, and then she had the opportunity to buy it, and she did. And she said she could never live anywhere else. It was home. She'd always lived in that house.
You're in more than a century living in the same house.
Even the change within that building would be incredible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
From 100 years of style.
Rewiring.
Oh, yeah.
All that sort of
It'd be
thing.
a project, wouldn't it?
Phenomenal. It'd be interesting to
And
meet.
outdoor loos would turn into indoor loos. I mean, the change
yeah.
in that house would be remarkable. It'd be good to have a tour. We should invite ourselves round.
I'm sure she'd love that.
Have a chat to Edna.
Hi, Edna.
Hi, Edna, if you're watching.
Because Nana and Grandy had an outdoor toilet.
Yeah, they would have done.
Yeah, and then they had one put in upstairs at some point. And,
Oh, that's swish, yeah.
but isn't it funny how this changed? So there's been so much change, and we forget about it.
Well,
Us younger lot.
my neck of the woods, Brentwood, all of the workers' cottages you still don't have any upstairs bathrooms.
Really?
You just have the one that was put on at the back, obviously, at whatever time when the loos came from the outdoor to the indoor. But it still doesn't happen. Still don't have any bathrooms upstairs in many of the houses in Brentwood. It is fascinating, isn't it, how quickly, really...
Now everyone's got en-suites.
Changed, and now everyone wants a detached house with gardens and the rest of it. It's incredible, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah. If you've got one of those really old houses, all right, get into it. It'd be fascinating. If you've got any pictures, really good to see. GBviews at gbnews.com.
Yes. Now, biggest story of today, it's on the front of most of the newspapers, is, of course, Phillip Schofield. He quit ITV after admitting to having an affair with a young male colleague at This Morning.
Yeah, he's also been dropped now by his talent agency, YMU. They've represented him for more than 35 years.
Well, we can speak now to our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tetchy, who is still in Cannes for us. Good morning to you, Stephanie. So, I mean, we were talking about this time last week, weren't we? 6 or 7 days ago, he quit This Morning, and now we know he's stepping down from ITV. What's happened in the past 6 days? And tell us what was in that statement.
Well, Stephen and Ellie, I have to admit, this has been like the worst kept secret in showbiz. You know, since Phillip stepped down last week, I knew that a lot of journalists in the industry will be like dogs on acid, trying to find out why has the golden boy of TV decided to quit This Morning. Initially, people thought it's because he wasn't getting on with Holly, and he became the story more than the show, reason why he stepped down. But now, from yesterday's statement, he's come out and said, you know, he's admitted that he did have an affair with a younger male colleague, which he actually brought to This Morning. For many years now, a lot of my showbiz colleagues and a lot of newspapers have been sitting on this story, which Phillip has always denied. And I can imagine in the week since he stepped down, a lot of journalists, as we do know who the identity of who his ex-lover was, has been approaching this man to come out with his side of the story. And I think what Phillip has done now is he's trying to save some face for this man by trying to come out and say, actually, we did have an affair. And he's trying to somewhat give him some privacy in this situation, which I think has really just gone out of the window now. I think there is much more of this story to come. I think while Phillip would like to think this story will be put to bed, I don't think that will be the case.
Because he's now, I mean, even on the most positive spin on this, he's someone who has admitted lying, cheating on his wife, lying to colleagues and even his lawyer and all sorts of people. Is there any way back? Is his TV career finished now?
I think so, because, you know, what he's done, he's thrown like a big organisation such as ITV into disrepute, because now, even though the relationship was consensual and, as Phillip said, it was legal, it's the morality issue here, Stephen. He was married at the time. He did deny to ITV bosses, Holly and his talent agency that this affair even took place. So now we're looking at a broadcaster who has lost his credibility, which is a shame after 40 years in the business. wise, he should have known better. As he said, it was a very unwise decision. But again, when we look at the actual structure of the relationship, this is a young man he's known since he's been a teenager. So you are going to get the accusations of grooming. And now there's a lot of finger pointing on who knew about the relationship. You know, now This Morning has actually lost its shining star as a TV show that most people love, because people are going to be like, who knew about this affair? ITV bosses, did they do much to protect this young man? Because there is a lot more to this story that has actually come out to the public.
Yes, of course, Stephanie, there are going to be questions now about what bosses at ITV knew and when they knew it. What do you think this will mean for Holly Willoughby? She's worked with Phillip for 13, 14 years now, hasn't she? She's on that extended half-term break. What do you think will happen when she's meant to be back on the 5th of June?
To be honest, Ellie, I feel like Holly is walking on ice in terms of where she stands with the show now, because, you know, Holly and Phil came as a duo. So since him stepping down last week, you know, there's been talks of maybe she'll be co-hosting the show with Alison Hammond. But the fact is now, I don't know if viewers will be able to see that show in the same light. And maybe bosses might have to think about rebranding the show altogether. You know, there's no talent that is bigger than the show. So I think when it comes to Holly, it's going to be a very fine line on whether she can continue the show. As we've seen over the past week, the ratings have already dipped. So whether Holly will be able to make this a flagship show on her own or with a co-host is yet to be seen. But the critics are out and the critics are going to be watching. And for Holly, it will be very hard for her to do her job when she does come back.
I mean, yeah, because as you say, the question is here is because on a morality perspective, who knew what and when? Because let's be honest, Stephanie, I mean, look, we've had this admission now from Phillip Schofield, but certainly in the business, people knew this was going on. I mean, this has been the talk of the town since that coming out 3 years ago.
Definitely, Stephen, and it's not a shocking revelation, I think, to the public now, and newspapers have now got the green light to run with this story, but it's not shocking at all because a lot of people have known it. So if you've got outsiders and showbiz journalists and industry people knowing about this situation, I find it very surprising that ITV bosses didn't really know what was going on. I think they managed to sweep it under the carpet, which they've done for the past 3 years, but I think now it's like a point. It's a blaming game, and I don't think Phillip's the only one to blame here. I think, you know, fair enough, it was a consensual relationship, but this is someone who has abused his power, and we've seen over the past few years when it comes to TV and figures abusing their power, it's not on. It's abusing your trust and abusing the public's trust in you as a broadcaster that should be trusted. And I think it's a shame that a 40-year career has ended like this. And right now the public are, you know, going after Phillip. But I do worry for his mental health because he's practically lost it all.
Yeah, and been axed by his agent, axed totally from ITV. At least 6 days ago, there was talk, wasn't there, of him staying on and doing other programmes. We now know that that won't be the case. Stephanie, we can see the light coming in behind you in that, it looks like a wonderful hotel room in Cannes. Do you think the sun has finally come out in Cannes for you?
Yes, the sun has been out all this week. It's been almost like 25 degrees, 26 degrees. So it's been lovely. It's been hot. It's the kind of weather we expect from the south of France.
And you've been rubbing shoulders with the stars as well. We're going to be talking to you about it later. Just give us a tease. Who were you with last night?
Oh gosh, last night, it's been a lot of parties, I would have to admit. You know, after the Ampha Gala, Leonardo DiCaprio threw his annual Cannes party, which was amazing, and obviously all the A-listers came out. And today's the big finale of the Cannes Film Festival, so it's all about wrapping up, and we're going to find out who is going to win that prestigious Palme d'Or, who will be the winning film. There's 19 films that have been up for it, so we'll find out which film will be crowned the winner of this year's Cannes Film Festival.
OK. Stephanie, catch you later. Thank you very much indeed.
Did you just pick up on how casually she just said she was at Leonardo DiCaprio's party?
Yeah. I know. I wasn't going to let her milk it anymore.
which was really good, she said. I bet it was.
Yeah, I
She
didn't know
lives
we
the
threw a
life.
part. She does live the life.
She does live the life. She's always off somewhere fabulous, looking fabulous.
Makes you sick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
She's wearing yellow as well, just pointing that out.
Is she?
She's got the memo.
We're all connected.
Oh,
We're
we
a
are.
family here, aren't we?
We are a family. Lovely.
Very nice.
It is 13 minutes past 7. Now, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called accusations he broke further COVID-19 lockdown rules absolutely nonsensical. He said he would not say who he thinks is trying to stitch him up, but he's previously claimed that he's the victim of a politically motivated plot.
The electric bike ridden by 2 teenagers before they were killed in a crash was an early birthday present for one of them. 16-year-old Carice Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans were killed in Cardiff whilst riding an e-bike. Following a community vigil for the pair held yesterday, Harvey's aunt said that next week he would have turned 16 years old. The police watchdog is investigating after CCTV footage emerged showing a police van following the teens before their deaths.
The warm weather set to continue this bank holiday weekend. Highs of 24 possible in southeast Wales and around the Bristol Channel today and tomorrow. The Met Office says the forecast will continue into next week. Highest temperature in the UK yesterday was Bainbridge at 22.6. Cardiff is the one to beat, though. It was 23.4 last Monday, and that is the highest temperature of the year so far. Now, Rishi Sunak has been warned by the Bank of England that the UK could be in recession next year as persistent inflation continues to force up interest rates.
But the Chancellor says he would back further interest rate rises, even if they risk plunging the UK into recession in order to deal with inflation.
OK, let's talk to business and finance commentator Michael Wilson, who joins us now. Michael, good to see you this morning. Can I clear something up? Because we have a guest comes on, Dr Roger Gewolb, who's has advised the Bank of England in the past. And every time he comes on, he says this whole interest rate rise to combat inflation is nonsensical because it's not that sort of inflation, he says.
OK, so ask him then, therefore, this following question. Why was it during a time of very low interest rates that the Bank of England decided to throw fuel on the fires already burning, throw petrol on, by continuing to print cheap money? Ask him how it is that the Bank of England, which has as I understand it, a link of agents, as they call them, around the country, didn't see this inflation, this sticky inflation, core inflation we'll call it, that's what he'll call it, so high. Never mind the headline rate, which came down to, in inverted commas, came down to 8.7%. And ask him, thirdly, how it is. You're looking at shelves there, aren't you? What do people actually do in a cost of living crisis? Why was this not seen before? Ask him, if there is time, number 4. I thought now the grown-ups were in charge. After the so-called disastrous Truss and Kwarteng mini-budget, when interest rates rose and international interest rates rose and nobody wanted to deal with the Bank of England and the UK economy, we're in exactly the same position with the grown-ups in charge. How come? Those are the sort of questions I would like the answers to, because I don't know what the answers are. And my thing is, now the grown-ups in charge, it's just as bad as it was, if not worse.
And Michael, people at home will be very confused as well because there is just so much mixed messaging. I mean, on the front of The Guardian this morning, UK is set for recession before the next election, whereas the IMF this week was saying that we were going to avoid a recession. So people will be wondering, who are we to trust?
What the IMF, sure. What the IMF, which, has to be said, the good girls and boys in Washington at the IMF always look through things through a rearview mirror. But what they said, no recession in 2023. Now what we're told is 2024. That's what we're talking about now. There may well be a recession then because the Bank of England has no other weapon to use apart from interest rates. And the Chancellor said, did he not, that he was comfortable, in inverted commas, with the economy going into recession if it meant taming inflation. inflation. I mean, people walking the streets, going shopping this weekend will be thinking to themselves, why am I concerned about these so-called headline figures of inflation? Does stuff cost more? Yes, it does. Does food cost more? Yes, it does. Do my energy costs still increase? Well, there might be a slight dip. And the Prime Minister has already said this week that he's not unaverse to bringing back the guaranteed price scheme, which cost a load of money, as everybody knows. But is everything rising? Yes, it is.
But this sort of... the problem is, if recessions are going to be fuelled by inflation and higher interest rates, and one not combating the other... why bother with the higher interest rate? Because, I mean, the stuff that's costing us more, as you say, is food and fuel, which inflation, higher interest rates isn't going to stop us using it.
No, it won't. And I mean, I think you've answered your question, haven't you? Because the recession is one thing, but we still eat and we still will be driving our cars and still filling up at petrol pumps and still wanting to heat our homes over the winter. And I'm sorry about this, and I do love the yellow this morning, but just to pour some more gloom on things, the Qataris, and you should listen to them as well, because they are the world's largest supplier of natural gas. They've already said that this coming winter is going to be really tough. It was relatively mild this time around. The summer, that's another thing. But when the winter comes, it's going to be cold and there will be an increase in prices. So everything is pushing towards this increase in prices. Bad luck for the current gang of politicians who are in charge in Westminster at the moment, because it's coming just before an election. They won't be liking that. So we can expect, I would imagine, some relatively short-term measures to try to help the populace, particularly those who will be noticing that their mortgages will be going up, for example.
Yeah. Oh, it's thoroughly depressing, isn't it? Michael, thanks very much indeed. You just wonder when it's going to end. I mean, obviously, Rishi Sunak's been promised us that inflation would halve by the end of the year. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, Bank of England saying that was a mistake to promise that, to make that one of the top
Then the Bank of England seems to be getting a lot wrong at the moment.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, who do you trust? I feel like there is mixed messaging about when this recession would come, if it indeed comes at all. But you're right, in terms of interest rates, for people that are already struggling to pay their mortgage, for example, they can't afford for it to go up anymore.
No.
And that's what we're talking about now. Terrifying.
Sure, you have some thoughts on that. GBviews at gbnews.com.
Well, stay with us. Next up, we're going to be getting ready for festival fever. Oh. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before
and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, the Prime Minister is working on creating an international treaty about artificial intelligence, which we could do with a bit of that in here, which could lead to a global regulator.
Well, this comes just days after Rishi Sunak met with American big tech leaders, where they discussed the risks that AI poses for disinformation.
Let's talk to Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, who's here. Morning to you.
Morning.
Morning.
I mean, I'm intrigued by this. The PM said at the G7, didn't he, in his closing speech, we're going to be world leaders when it comes to AI. And I remember thinking, are we? Are we really? But he's determined to press ahead with it.
So, I mean, the slightly ironic thing about that is that actually an awful lot of really good tech innovations are designed in the UK. They just then get bought by America because we're really bad at growing these companies. But it does highlight the tension, because on the one hand, this is a huge new technology. You know, we want to be out there at the front of it. On the other hand, we want to ideally make sure that it doesn't do huge damage, but there's going to be international pressure because these companies, they're very mobile. You can install some computers basically anywhere. So if you have a really strict regulatory regime, they'll go somewhere else.
What do you make of that meeting then? We're seeing pictures now, 2 days ago, Rishi Sunak meeting with those American tech bosses, including the head of Google. How do you think that went? It would suggest that it was enlightening, perhaps alarming for Rishi Sunak, because we're hearing this almost straight after.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, because they more than anyone else, they know what this technology could do. And when it poses an existential threat to Britain, it doesn't mean some kind of Terminator scenario where it suddenly hijacks all of America's nukes or anything. But as they said about disinformation, we're getting to the point now where you can make a video of somebody and it looks like they're saying it or doing something, and in fact, they're not doing it at all. Now, that's going to make life very difficult. You can make compromising videos and all kinds of things. So you do want to regulate that. And obviously, as America already has a lead on this, it's in America's interest to have a global regulatory system which keeps America in the forefront. The big problem is going to be, even if you can get European Union and Britain to sign up to it, you're not going to get China to sign up to this, and therefore you're going to have that international race to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. But if you get most countries to sign up to it, that's a big advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the ideal is
because that's a weird thing with all this. We've known it since the beginning of the internet. You know, this unregulated beast that's out there, that if we don't work on the international level from the offset here, it's screwed, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you also want is you want international cooperation on basically monitoring and catching misuse, right? Because you're not going to stop bad actors in certain countries from, say, making misinformation videos. But if you've got all of the big companies and most countries of the world working on countermeasures so that you can say, actually, that's a fake video, that's a really useful way to contain the damage that this can do. And the more countries that get on it now, the better.
How likely, how possible is it to actually regulate AI, though? I mean, we were talking earlier about having a cap on intelligence, but this intelligence is constantly evolving, constantly developing. It's going to be really hard to stay in front of, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And because with technology like this, also, it's very hard to regulate because you don't know what it's going to be doing next week, right? You don't know what use someone is going to come up for this. And also, some of the really damaging effects could be not to do with some super advanced technology, but it could just exacerbate negative social trends. So, for example, I was reading the other day, think about the recent tech innovations, the mobile phone solved boredom, Facebook solved, people watching. What happens if somebody comes up with a version of the AI, you're already seeing them advertised on the internet, this chatbot that can replace, say, a romantic partner for someone? That could hugely increase isolation and loneliness, but how do you ban that?
Yeah, and well, this is the thing, because you can't really ban stuff, can you? I mean, that's what intrigues me with this and this international regulation treaty, if you like, is that you can't ban a load of stuff because people will do it anyway. So it's how then do you regulate it? I'm intrigued by the fact they're calling this a treaty rather than anything else. Yeah, well, the treaty, that will basically give it a huge status, and it will mean that there's lots of things you can then hang off that treaty. You can hang off international regulatory bodies and panels, and you can have an international, regular Congress of parties to try and regulate. But it's about, I suppose, one, controlling the tech, but two, regulating what you can use that tech for to try and make sure that it doesn't go down sort of socially disadvantageous directions. But you can't have sanctions on that, can you, unless it's there for... I guess that's why the meeting with the big tech bosses, because it's about them limiting what can be done with their software, freeware, however you do it.
Well, you can ban certain things by treaty, and that treaty, in the United Kingdom, if we signed up to a treaty, that treaty would have effect, and we'd pass a bill, that treaty would have an effect in domestic law, and that would mean that any company developing AI in the UK would be bound by the stipulations of that treaty. I think the slight problem with having it as a treaty is that, unlike domestic law, where you draw up a bill, you pass an amendment, treaties take a while to negotiate, right? So are you going to go back every 5 years and be like, well, actually, we're now using AI to do this, which we hadn't thought about 5 minutes ago. So that could get quite cumbersome. So it would need to be quite a broad-ranging treaty, I think, which you can then sort of update without going through the full process.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
It is, and I could talk about this all day. I find it absolutely fascinating. Did you see the Pope, the generated image of the Pope in a massive puffer jacket? But even on that level, because so many people believed it to be true that the Pope was wearing this big white puffer jacket, it was AI generated. Yeah. It was a fake image, and it's the whole theme of misinformation, isn't it? You actually cannot believe what you see online because it could be AI generated.
And the problem is, in the same way that these chat programs, what they do is they learn off bodies of text. Well, image programs can learn off photographs. So if you're a famous person, or there's lots of photos of you out there, an AI, if it gets enough of those photos, can suddenly generate photorealistic fake pictures. Now, that could be all, we're already seeing sort of some of this fake stuff used in the uglier end of pornography, right? People would be getting their faces put on. That could only get even worse. And so that's a huge not that they need any more new danger for, say, women in public life, that this could be used in the great...
What about on it's the lighter side, if you like, but there's been political campaigns and things and adverts recently, and I don't know if it was approved by Labour or not, but certainly some of the Labour MPs were tweeting it, of like Rishi Sunak being an Uber Eats delivery driver and all that sort of thing. Now that's, again, if you're going to have concerns about fake information, you can't then use it in political campaigns, can you? Even if it's comparatively innocuous.
Well, this is what regulation is for, because you have to draw the line. I think you might argue that using the Prime Minister as an Uber driver is kind of obviously fake, and you could have rules governing fair use parity for public figures, for example, but you do want to make sure that you can't use that same technology to go after somebody you don't like in private life, create fake photos of them that you can send to their family and friends or their employer. So that's exactly the kind of question that regulation has to tackle.
Yeah, OK. Henry, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Who knows where our faces will appear?
No, that's terrifying.
It
to
is
have compromising photos or videos that somebody's made.
Yeah.
With fake, like AI-generated images. It's terrifying.
I mean, the political ones, and there was quite a few politicians in these various different jobs. I don't remember what Dominic Raab was doing in one of them. Can't remember. But I mean, they looked absolutely
real,
totally real.
That is what's scary about it. I mean, there are many benefits, as we said, in terms of the medical world and science, but socially, especially on social media, it's going to be really difficult to regulate. I mean, there was this morning This week, there was this morning's on the papers. You might have noticed it's on the mind. But this week there was pictures online of a bombing at the Pentagon in the US, and it was AI generated. But obviously, so many people very quickly panicked, thinking there'd been a bombing. There hadn't been. It was AI generated. But that's how terrifying it could be.
Yeah, it's not what you need.
That's how good the images are.
Yeah,
they look real.
I'm sure you'll have a view on that. GB Views at gbnews.com. We've got all the stories making the newspapers very, very shortly. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:37 morning, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Yes, and on a lighter note...
Oh, we need it this morning.
Yeah, and we need it this morning, you're right. Have we seen the front page of the Mirror this morning? It features BBC legend Jan Leeming, who's 81, fighting ageism by asking why shouldn't older women wear swimsuits? Do we agree? Well, she looks great, doesn't she?
Well, interesting, because she was on the Eurovision thing, wasn't she? With Graham the other week. I didn't realise she was 81.
Doesn't she look amazing?
Oh, good on you, Jan.
Good for her. And yes, I do think you could wear swimsuits at that age. I think she looks great.
Why not? And she's being sensible. It's not a bikini.
Oh, you wouldn't like that, would you? You'd have to draw the line at a bikini.
I sort of think, yeah, bikinis. I thought, well, bikinis is a young woman's game, I would say. No, you may disagree.
Well, I think she looks wonderful.
She does look wonderful. Good on you, Jan.
Could be a trend.
Ms. Leeming. Sticking with the Mirror, the paper has also a lovely spread of Tina Turner in the arms of her friend David Bowie.
Oh, that's a lovely photo, isn't it? The Times have gone down a different route with their front page this morning. There's a really interesting article there about foreign teachers being offered £10,000 to come and work in England. It's reportedly to fill subject gaps in maths and science. What do you make of that? Do you think it's a good idea? Let us know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit torn on that one. Let's talk to writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller. Morning, you two.
Morning.
Let's kick off with the Express. Alan, and a bit more travel chaos.
Yeah, not again, BA. Travel chaos ruins holidays. This is Groundhog Day, is it? We've got a situation where tech issues have impacted many of the flights at Heathrow and across Europe internationally. And one of the most frustrating things, aside from it being really frustrating and costly, and a nightmare for people to have their holidays ruined, the long weekends when they've planned them so much in advance, is that then when they try to get any kind of resolution, there's, 75 to 100 metre queues with only one or two people helping them and people being told when they finally get to speak to someone, go to the website. It's really, really problematic, and I think it reflects an issue. On the one hand, everyone's talking about AI and how it's going to take over the world, but at the same time, we've got issues, not just with tech, but with logistics. We've got questions about broken Britain. It's not just the public sector. We know that the airports were closed for a long time, the retention in staff, efficiency in logistics. We need to get a grip with this situation.
Yeah, we do. It never seems to get any better, does it? This is the problem.
And it's not as though they don't know that the half-term is coming up or the summer holidays are coming up. There should have been at least more staff available to help people with this. OK, tech issues happen, but when you know that you're reaching a really, really, really high season, you kind of need to prepare. And the BA website, amongst many others, is notoriously kind of frustrating to try and use or to book through or to contact anyone through. So I think BA are facing some pretty big questions here.
Certainly are. Emma, let's go to the iWeekend, shall we? And austerity on trial is their headline.
So finally, the public inquiry into COVID is set to start next month. And one of the key witnesses who's going to be called is the former Chancellor George Osborne, amongst others, including the former Prime Minister David Cameron and also the former Health Secretary, now Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. And this is the first module, which is of the inquiry, which I imagine is going to go on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
The first module is going to cover 2010 to 2020, and it's going to look at the UK's resilience, the planning, the preparedness for a pandemic, basically. I just wonder about these inquiries, whether it's going to spend a lot of time going back, looking at austerity, looking at the NHS budget, whether the NHS just wasn't ready for a pandemic on this scale. Well, I wouldn't actually call it a pandemic on this scale. But anyway, whether they were not ready for this kind of health emergency, and then not really get to the questions which I think lots of us do want answered, the kind of lockdown file stuff about lockdown and about the necessity of those strict restrictions and about the severity of COVID or not. I just wonder if they're going to get caught up in things like austerity from 10 years ago. I want to talk about how they actually dealt with COVID.
Is there a relevance to this?
I think that it really reflects a one-sidedness and an approach of the COVID inquiry that we have to be very, very critical and wary of. The idea that their evaluation and assessment is going to be predicated on capacity going back over a decade, when in reality we saw that decisions were made around a whole set of criteria, lockdown being one key one, unprecedented, nothing to do with that. A COVID-only NHS. When we did open places potentially for more capacity, they weren't used at all. These are decisions based on very particular questions and an approach that jettisoned, that threw away our pandemic preparedness strategy. And I'm not sure that the COVID inquiry as it stands is fit for purpose currently.
No, I wonder what the benefit of it is at all, to be honest, considering how long it's going to take and how much it is going to cost, which will be tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds.
When you go back, and we know, look, we've had the debates a million times about austerity in the NHS and whether the NHS is or isn't, needs more funding, but in terms of a COVID inquiry, I think Alan's exactly right. We need to look at those key questions. Was it a hysterical overreaction? Did we force people into lockdown? Did we end up having, being overwhelmed because of other decisions? And what about those Nightingale hospitals that were built for this wave of sick people that were not used? What about those questions?
Yeah, fair point.
Alan, you've got a related story in the Daily Mail, haven't you? Global health chiefs were yesterday told to forget drawing up pandemic powers that could force Britain into another lockdown.
That's right. So this is a very important story that looks at the role of the World Health Organization that up until a few years ago had much more member state influence, and then we've seen far less of that and much more domination by one or two nations and some big financial organisations. And what's happened is very positive, which is that Esther McVeigh and a number of other MPs, including Sir Christopher Chope, David Davis and others, have challenged the question that, about our own sovereignty in the UK, about the decision-making of our own government and MPs to be able to set criteria, not have a declaration by the World Health Organization, either in terms of amendments or a new treaty that, once it's enshrined, could do all sorts of things like push lockdowns immediately, have vaccine passports, many of the things that people contested in the UK. But whatever anyone thinks about it, this is a decision like Brexit, which is about sovereignty, where people, elected representatives in the UK need to decide. So it's really a positive thing that this is getting airtime now, it's getting attention. It's also the case that it won't be ratified till May, and everyone in the UK has an opportunity to speak to their MPs, to write to the government, to let them know what they think about this, because in the end, having just talked about the COVID inquiry and having seen the lockdown files and the Twitter files, we know that all sorts of things happened, from people being deplatformed, other scientific views not being allowed to be seen and heard, the opposite of science. And so this is an opportunity for us to say, look, we want to have our own elected representatives make decisions, because when an organisation makes a declaration or says things, either legally forcing other nation states to do something or even just having it out there, it has an influence. So this is a really crucial story.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know if... I guess you two would both agree on this one. I get the impression. I wonder if we were talking about a global situation, isn't there an argument to say there should be a global response?
Yes, but I still want to have a say in that. I think people feel that they want to have a say in that, and in this situation, we don't.
Yeah, no.
And that is about sovereignty, exactly.
Fair point. Let's bring it closer to home, for the time being at least, in the Express. Sainsbury's, the boss of Sainsbury's, says they're not guilty of greedflation.
So the boss of Sainsbury's is saying, actually, the grocers are not using the runaway inflation to boost their profits. He said, we made less profits year on year. I think for many people that are watching food prices literally doubling on really basic items, not luxuries, not caviar, not champagne, but on bread and cheese and milk and, real staples, fruit and vegetables, things like that. They are really valid questions about the supermarkets and sort of, are they using this global, economic crisis, the situation in Ukraine that we keep being told about? Are they using this as an excuse to push up prices? And when inflation falls, Stephen, are prices ever going to come down again?
Well, no, because inflation...
Because we keep hearing it's going to be well below 10%.
Yeah,
should be around 2%.
Yeah, but inflation in that would require deflation, wouldn't it? Not just reduced inflation.
Why can't prices come back to how they were before if inflation goes back? People have got used to paying, £2 for a loaf of bread.
That's not how it works, is it?
Not how it works.
Because if when inflation comes down, it just means that the prices, as they are, will grow less quickly.
Well, I think it's outrageous. And I think this is what we were talking about earlier with the recession and things like that. Is it a technical recession or not? It's sort of irrelevant to people on the street, to actual people living their lives, because what they're paying for every day is food and fuel and mortgage costs and, rent costs and things like that.
That's certainly how you're feeling it, isn't it? That's where, it's hitting the pound in your pocket, just doing the weekly food shop.
Absolutely. And what we need to do is we need to create a situation where people have more money in their pocket, they have better wages. That means an ambitious... let's have a plan. Let's have a plan for house building, for investment in research and development. Let's expand our capacity in terms of energy and energy investment, not have limits, not have restrictions in terms of, you know, we've gone too far. There's this whole attitude that we've got, it seems to dominate both main parties, that actually the solutions to things is to have restrictions and limits, technocratic managerialism. Actually, why don't we have a World's Fair Festival of Britain approach where we can really have a dynamic wealth creation for everyone? It's not a dichotomy between companies, profits and staff. Everyone makes more money. We could build millions of new houses. We can have a situation the coastal regions are developed, universities, biotech, a whole range of areas, retraining. That takes commitment, that takes principle, and that would end up transforming our relationship, and in agriculture as well, which is what's needed.
And when Rishi Sunak had his Farm to Fork summit at 10 Downing Street, he just messed around and did selfies with the Clarkson's Farm TV team. He didn't actually address the issue of agriculture, farming, food prices, all of that, the really key issues.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's still... I mean, I just wonder if it's a bit of a utopia, isn't it, to say, well, we need to just do something where everyone's earning more money, and, I mean, yeah, great.
Well, people should be able to afford to feed themselves. That's not a utopia. That is the reality for people.
No, that is a reality, absolutely. But when you just say, well, people need to earn better wages... Well, it's easily said. How on earth do you do it?
Well, it's a very good question, but that was a dominant factor of both left and right and the centre for decades. Whether you're a Keynesian or you're into Hayek, the whole principle was about wealth creation. How it was distributed was often a discussion. It's a symptom of our low horizons today that we think we have to put up with this situation. You know, in the 70s in America and Ford, they were on $20-25 an hour, right? People could have 2 cars, they could have a swimming pool. These are what they call blue-collar, what we call working-class people, right? The whole idea that we can create something is much to do with our own outlook on things.
Oh, well, we shall see, we shall see. Emma, Alan, good to see you both. We'll catch up with you next hour.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, it's the beginning of the bank holiday, of course, and with, unusually, a warm weekend ahead, you can safely say it's turning into festival season.
Yes, but with inflation still high, some music fans will be looking to save a few pennies. And as we know, festival tickets can cost upwards of hundreds of pounds.
Yeah, well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has been talking to music lovers at Glaston Budget in Leicestershire with tickets for the festival about a third of the price of what you'd normally pay.
In the East Midlands, the rhythm of the countryside quickens to the thumping heartbeat of a party.
It is very nearly the start of the Summer Music Festival season. We're at the end of May, but all of these people are getting in the mood here at Glaston Budget. We're right in the heart of Leicestershire. It's a tribute band music festival. It costs a little bit less than some of those big music festivals, and that's why loads of people are coming here to spend their bank holiday in this way.
Reaching its 19th year, Glaston Budget returns at exactly the right time. Sky-high inflation is forcing music fans to abandon dreams of top-tier festivals.
Well, the weather's great for it. So
yeah, been before?
A couple of years ago.
Events manager John O says that Glaston Budget is trying to make festivals a reality for everyone.
There is massive cost infrastructure for a festival for us, but we really try and keep as close as possible to that to keep the prices as low as possible.
Stuart's been on the circuit for decades, but wonders how this season will play out.
Maybe there might be a change in people's habits, you know, spending cash, maybe trying to conserve a little bit more. And I wouldn't blame them if they did, but all of our expenses have gone up.
Only a few hundred people showed up for the first Budget Festival in 2005. Now 15,000 are expected over the bank holiday. Many have been before.
It works because it's cheap and it's a whole weekend.
We get the tickets and the early bird, so they're cheaper anyway.
It is really good value, but the bands are really good.
It's only camping, but some have brought enough gear to stay for weeks.
What haven't I brought? Literally everything.
Beer, tent, sleeping bag, money.
I have actually just had my hip resurfaced, so perhaps I shouldn't be doing this, but I am doing it anyway, so yeah.
Most of the acts are tribute bands like Antarctic Monkeys and Motor Headache, clever puns for crisp-sounding copies. This is Jack's second year here, performing as Ed Sheeran.
Being an Ed Sheeran act, obviously we've got like loads of hits to play, and just have one big sing-along. That's the idea, just have one big messy sing-along.
Before the pandemic, around 5 million Brits were partying at music festivals. That number will likely drop while prices are high. But smaller music festivals may be catching those that can't bear a summer without one. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicestershire.
Fancy that?
Well, no, I don't. My days of festival going are over, to be honest.
Did you used to go?
I used to go to one called the Greenbelt Festival.
Where was that?
It was used to go. Where was the last one? Castle Ashby, I think the last one I went to, and it was great. But you know, the whole sleeping in a field and the toilet situation and all that sort of thing. No, it's gone now. It's gone. No more.
It's tough.
No more. I don't mind a bit of wild camping, just the two of us, but not in the whole festival thing now.
Can't be doing with that, no.
No. But if you can do it cheaper, that's clearly for an slightly older crowd, dare I say, the people, if someone's just had their hip resurfaced before going to the festival. But good on them. Go and have a good time. And if it's cheaper, brilliant.
Go for it. My personal highlight being the Antarctic monkeys in that report.
Yes. I don't know what the Arctic monkeys actually sound like. I've never listened to them.
Very cool.
Are they?
They're Northerners, you'd like them. Stay with us, we've got the latest on the Schofield saga. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Morning, this is your latest weather update for GB News from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin and the weather looks pretty good this weekend if you like it dry and fine. It will turn a little cooler over the next couple of days and some of the beaches will be a little fresh, but generally we've got high pressure controlling things, bringing a lot of dry and pretty sunny weather too. Now there is this weather front pushing into northern Scotland, so a fairly drab start to the weekend here. A little bit of rain just trickling at the moment down across the Highlands. That's tending to fizzle out as it sinks southwards, so central belt, eastern Scotland, mostly dry, just clouding over a little. For much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells. There's a bit of a breeze on some coasts, bringing a fresher feel, and still a fairly brisk wind blowing over northern Scotland. But here, after a grey start, it may actually brighten up a bit this afternoon. Elsewhere in the sunshine, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23, 24 across parts of the Midlands and perhaps South Wales and southwest England. So feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. It'll cloud over a bit this evening over central and then southern Scotland, and we'll see more clouds spilling in across eastern parts of England overnight. But again, most places are going to have a dry night with clear spells. Just a hint of blue on the chart there. Perhaps in some rural spots, again across Scotland, temperatures may dip down close to freezing, so a bit of a chilly start on Sunday morning, but again, most places having a fine day. It will be a cloudier day, perhaps across these eastern counties of England, but even here I suspect that cloud will break up a little bit as we go through the day and we'll see sunny spells. And a brighter day over the Highlands of Scotland and the Western Isles. Notice this breeze just coming in across these eastern coastal counties of England. That is going to bring a fresher feel and generally not as warm on Sunday. Slightly lower the temperatures tomorrow, but still in the south likely to get up to 20 degrees, maybe more. Monday also set fair. Again, a little cooler perhaps, but still some sunshine for most of us. Goodbye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday the 27th of May. Today, Phillip Schofield quits ITV after admitting to having an affair with a young male colleague at This Morning. Brits have been hit by bank holiday and half-term travel chaos, with hundreds of people stuck in queues and flights cancelled.
Rishi Sunak is scrambling to update the government's approach to regulating artificial intelligence amid warnings that the industry poses an existential risk to humanity. And the richest game in world football sees Coventry and Luton meet today at Wembley for a place in the Premier League.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Lots of you getting stuck into the whole debate about money and recession, and are we heading into a recession and all the rest of it. John, just bring you this one from John, who says, I strongly believe Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng had the budget about right to recover our economy. Now, I don't know, John. I mean, because I don't know. I tell you what I think the big problem with that was, that budget, apart from the fact that obviously the markets didn't like it, which is a separate question in some respects. But it was that 45p tax rate thing. Because I think even people who pay that 45p tax rate, because it was so unexpected, were just like, I thought we had real financial problems here. So this doesn't seem right.
Didn't seem in line with what's going on.
No. I mean, as well as they may well have been smiling and say, oh, this is nice for us, but is this really the right decision? I think there was a lot of that going on. So I don't know. But it's very difficult, isn't it? It just went down so badly with all the markets and things. But then should the markets be controlling politics in that way? It's a minefield, isn't it?
It certainly is. Ed was a fan of Michael Wilson, though. Says your last guest was awesome. That was Mr. Michael Wilson. a friend of the programme.
Yes, indeed.
Ed says he hit the nail on the head and clearly wanted to say more.
Yeah.
He's very passionate.
He's a very knowledgeable man.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable, yes.
Knows it. He does know his stuff. The problem with it is, it's about breaking it down into ways that we can all understand it, isn't it? Because it is so complex. That it's what we try to do for you. I mean, let's be honest, not for you, for us as well, because I mean, we have to talk about it.
We like to make sense of it.
And sometimes you think, I don't quite understand what all of this actually means. So we're trying to make sense of it for us, for all of us. But Michael's very good at that.
No, he's very good, so we're glad that you like him as well. But do get in touch on any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbnews@gbnews.com. It is a new email address. The old one doesn't work. So
anymore.
We've been told. So send them to this new email address.
Yeah. It doesn't work deliberately. We haven't just found it. We've changed it on purpose.
Yeah, we've...
.com's the website's .com and everything now. It's good.
So you can get us all over the world, isn't it? That's the whole...
All over the where?
The world.
Oh, the world.
World.
She's getting very enthusiastic.
Well, do you know what? I used to say willed. Used to be very Essex. Yeah. And then my mum, who's a northerner, you'd like her as well.
Oh, good, I do.
She was like,
what? I like Joan.
Yeah, Joan, well done, not Jean, well done. She's like, what are you saying? Willed? And I was like, yeah, willed. And she was like, oh, world.
Were you that bad?
Yeah.
Oh.
Come on. Essex born and bred, so yeah, I've had to change it so people understand what I'm saying.
Always helps in this business.
Anyway, so I was a bit worried I said willed.
Yeah, no, you didn't, no. Okay. But anyway, look, let's move on to our main story. And I know some of you have been in touch saying, I don't want to... Oh, Phillip Schofield, I'm fed up of talking about it. We've got to talk about it, and I'll tell you for why, because, I mean, the programme is an institution on ITV. He's one of the biggest stars in the UK, and as a result, it is on every paper this morning. It is a big story, whether you're a viewer of his or not. Anyway, he has now quit ITV entirely. He'd already left this morning, but was still part of the ITV family. We're still employed by ITV. Anyway, no more. That's all over after he admitted to having an affair with a young male colleague this morning.
Well, the presenter has now been dropped by his talent agency, YMU, who represented him for over 35 years.
Well, our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tecci, is in Cannes. We can catch up with her now. Morning to you, Stephanie. I mean, look, this is clearly a huge blow. Is it the end of Phillip Schofield as a TV presenter in the UK?
I hate to say it, but Stephen, I do think it is an end for him. And it's a shame after like a 40-year career where he's just been a beloved figure on people's TV screens. I think what's happened is that he's thrown ITV into disrepute. And then you think to yourself, how can he go to another broadcaster such as BBC, Channel 4, and then try establish a career with them? He hasn't come across well in this situation because, to be frank, there's just been too many lies. And my journalist instinct is that it's not the end of this story. I can imagine a lot of my fellow showbiz and journalists have been like dogs on acid this week trying to find out more about this situation. I know Phillip probably thought it had been put to bed last week by stepping down from this morning, but you know, from him issuing that statement yesterday, clearly there's been more digging and there's more to this situation than him falling out with Holly, because now he has admitted having an affair with a younger male colleague. You know, the issue is not so much the affair, but just the morality of the situation and the fact that he has been pulling a blind eye on a lot of the people he worked with. So the trust is gone for Phillip Schofield as a broadcaster.
And of course, Stephanie, there are going to be questions now about what people at ITV knew and when. There's also going to be questions about Holly Willoughby and how much she knew. How much of an impact, if any, do you think it will have on her and her return after the half-term break?
Well, I can imagine that Holly's probably using this half-term break to think about what is her future on that show. Because this morning, as Stephen said, it's an institution and it works as a duo with Phillip and Holly. And now he's gone. You know, there's been talks of maybe her and Alison working together, but I don't know if they would be able to recreate that same magic as Phillip and Holly have done over the past 13, 14 years. And as you've said, Ellie, it is very much going to be a blame game now. I don't think the newspapers, much to our viewers' annoyance, are going to leave this situation alone, because there's much more to it and there's much more to come. And the newspapers have been sitting on this situation for 3 years, and Phillip Schofield has denied so many times about this situation, and now he's admitted it. I think he's actually opened a can of worms, and to be honest, there's talks whether if This Morning can even survive as a programme.
I mean, it's a question of trust, all of this, isn't it? As far as, I know there are lots of different aspects to this story, but from a viewer's perspective, if you're a viewer of This Morning or any of the other shows that he's done, it's that big question of Phillip Schofield not being the person that we all thought he was.
Well, in his defence, everybody's got a personal life. He's allowed to have that. This affair, as much as it was with the younger man, he has admitted it, and it was consensual. As he said, it was illegal. The man was of a legal age. But the fact is, the lies that people have not liked that has come from this situation. And I think, what happens is when your star becomes more bigger than the show, people are not going to be focusing on the show anymore. They're just going to be focusing on, what has Phil got to say, or what has he done now? And I don't think any broadcaster wants to risk that. And I think that's a shame after 40 years in the business. But, it is about mental health, because we've seen cases before, like Caroline Flack, when she was going through her drama. Just all that media scrutiny is sometimes a lot for one person to take, despite their mistakes.
Stephanie, on a totally different story now. You are in Cannes. You've been there for us for over a week now. We believe you have a Spice Girls story for us.
Yes, I do. So yesterday I was rubbing shoulders with Geri Halliwell because she's actually going to be starring in the new Gran Turismo film, which is going to be coming out in August. So she came to Cannes yesterday with her co-star Orlando Bloom, and they were doing a photo call, and they were talking to some of us to kind of talk about the film and what we can expect. And Geri Halliwell, of course, is married to Christian Horner, who works for Red Bull. So she's very up to date on the racing world. So she's going to be playing a mum in this film, which is basically every teenage boy's dream, going from just being a gamer on the game to actually becoming a real car racer driver in real life. So it's set to be a really good film. So it was great catching up with them both yesterday on the Croisette.
What's Geri like? Because, obviously, I've always been intrigued by Geri, because she's been sort of controversial in her own way and all the rest of it. But is she just a nice person?
Oh, she is. I felt like I was having my childhood dream fulfilled, because she was very much like Ginger Spice. She had that sass about her. She was very down to earth. And I think it will be obviously, we've seen her in Spice World, but it'll be quite interesting to see how she does in this film. I think she's really breaking out into Hollywood, and this is going to be a very big blockbuster. It's very much anticipated to come to the cinemas. So I think it'll be quite a good watch.
Yes, absolutely. And a Spice Girls reunion. Love the sound of that.
Is there?
Gosh, I used to have the bed sheets. I am a Spice Girls fan. I think it's quite good that if they can reunite, because, for many years, Victoria has always been on the edge about whether she wanted to come back or not. And now that she's managed to get her on board, I think it's all systems go for a bit of girl power reunion in the future.
Oh, I hope so, Steph. That would just be the best news ever. I love the Spice Girls. All we need now is Victoria Beckham. Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
I feel sort of out the loop.
Oh, you can come with us.
No, thank you. No.
If they tour in London,
I'm sure they're very, very good.
I think one of the best nights of my life was going to see Spice Girls. It's just fabulous. Just the energy, as Stephanie touched on there with Geri Halliwell. It's great. I love it. Nice. Everyone's welcome.
Right, there you go. Well, maybe I might be washing my hair that night. You never know. It is 11 minutes past 8. Now, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called accusations he broke further COVID lockdown rules nonsensical. He says he doesn't know who's trying to stitch him up, but he said the Cabinet Office decision to give entries from his official diary during the pandemic to police without asking him first was ridiculous.
The electric bike ridden by two teenagers before they were killed in a crash was an early birthday present. 16-year-old Carice Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans were killed in Cardiff whilst riding an e-bike. The police watchdog is investigating after CCTV footage emerged showing a police van following the teens before their deaths.
The warm weather is going to continue this bank holiday weekend. Highs of 24 possible in southeast Wales and around the Bristol Channel, both today and tomorrow. The Met Office says temperatures could get as high as 24. The forecast, the good weather that is, will continue into next week. The weather will be nice.
Well,
The weather be nice, I say, in sort of English.
I say...
Maybe a barbecue tonight.
Oh, yeah, great idea. I'm having a barbecue later.
Are you?
Yep, can't wait. Haven't bought any of the food yet, so still got to do that. But looking forward to eating it later.
7.5 out. What's he doing?
Well,
He's
yeah.
going shopping now.
Doing that, yeah. Don't you think it's a coincidence as well that we put on yellow and it's 24 degrees outside?
It's
like the sun has literally come out. Yeah, it's like manifested it.
Yeah, we have. There you go. Anyway, from lovely sunshine and all things natural to things completely unnatural.
Oh, yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
I'm really enjoying your segues, just so you know.
Are you?
Yeah, you just take a conversation, it's like, right, we need to relate this to the top of the story, let's go. That was very good.
Thank you
and you
very
do
much.
it just off the cuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's professional.
I'm semi-professional. The Prime Minister is working on creating an international treaty for artificial intelligence. Now, that could potentially lead to a global regulator.
Well, this comes just days after Rishi Sunak met with American big tech leaders, where they discussed the risks that AI poses for disinformation.
Let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who's here. Morning to you.
Morning.
I mean, so this artificial intelligence can mean and is so many different things, but this seems to be focused on things like deep fake and all this, where you can actually put information out there which looks absolutely genuine, but is totally false.
Well, it's quite interesting, this, because it seems as though what Rishi Sunak has done is a complete U-turn in the last month on what he thinks over AI and how the United Kingdom should approach regulation of AI. There was an AI white paper just literally 2 months ago, which basically said that AI was the best thing to happen to mankind for centuries and it's going to bring all sorts of social and economic goods. Now, Rishi Sunak has gone and met with these tech leaders and has suddenly realised that there are all sorts of problems. Yes, there are the kind of deep fakes that you're talking about there, but he's also very worried about ChatGPT. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, AI, the sort of things that AI could be doing, if, for example, using AI to make hiring decisions, seemed as though it was still a long way off. Well, ChatGPT makes it a reality. And Rishi Sunak is now asking all sorts of questions. For example, what happens if you use AI to fire someone? Are you still liable for that person's career? Do you still, if they take it to court, who's responsible? Are you responsible or is the AI? All sorts of really, really thorny questions. But it plays in his new plan to regulate the sector in some way, to talk about global regulator, plays into this international argument which is going on, basically between the US, the big tech companies in the US, and US lawmakers who believe that AI should be allowed to kind of go wild and want to see it adding to the economy, and Europeans, including Rishi Sunak, and other all the EU leaders who want to regulate it right down. And what's going to happen if AI is massively regulated in Europe? The maker of ChatGPT is now talking about pulling ChatGPT out of Europe because of the heavy regulations on it, but is allowed to sort of go wild in the US. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, because we've seen before MPs just being so far behind the curve when new technology is developed. They make these white papers, it takes months and months and months, and then in weeks it's completely overtaken by some new AI development. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Well, that kind of makes sense in the sense that Rishi Sunak is going for an international treaty because, of course, this is technology that would be used all over the world. But it does pose the question, doesn't it, on even how do you regulate AI? Because it's developing so fast, it's developing at such a rapid speed that we can't possibly stay ahead of it, can we, at all times?
It does seem to shine a light on just how slow and laborious our lawmaking processes are, the fact that this white paper, which took over a year to write, has been overtaken by new developments in AI technology over the last 6 weeks, kind of says it all. As you say, how do you begin to regulate it? One of the regulations which the EU regulators have proposed is asking the people who have created the AI technology put the onus on them to identify the risks that could be posed by their new technology and to find a way to mitigate them. But of course, AI is almost bigger than its creator. Once it's got rolling, it's very difficult for one person to identify what the risk could possibly be, even if they invented that technology themselves. Another issue is that AI will use, we can see it with ChatGPT, it uses copyrighted material to gain the knowledge that is needed to produce the sort of answers that it can. And is that copyright material still copyright if it's being used by a robot? So that's just one of the really, really thorny issues that these regulators are trying to deal with. But as you say, our processes are just too slow for something that is moving so quickly.
I was going to say, I'm just looking, because I had notifications, just looking on my laptop at Microsoft Edge, which is the internet browser, which they've just updated. And as soon as you click in, turn your ideas into images with AI. Image Creator helps you generate AI images. Just type in a text prompt and it creates an image for you. I mean, this is moving so fast. We're already behind the curve, aren't we?
Well, absolutely. And we don't quite know yet. And it seems worryingly that even some of the creators of AI don't quite understand how some of their programs work. And one issue which regulators are trying to deal with is misinformation. People are asking ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT to write a rap in the style of the King James Bible, and it's all very funny and it's all over Twitter. But people are using it for serious purposes. And I know someone who used it, he works in the law, he used it to try and identify a specific passage of a specific law, and it came back with a completely made-up answer. It then apologised for making up the answer when he questioned I want to say about the AI robots, a bit sexist of me, I don't know what gender it is. And yeah, it apologised, but that's not really good enough for people who are going to use it for serious purposes. And then it comes to, well, who is responsible if an error is written into law because someone has used AI to get their information? Who's responsible for that mistake? And those are the sort of laws which we're going to have to, the UK and everyone else is going to have to write over the next few years to catch up with this AI revolution.
Yeah, we really are. Lovely, thank you very much indeed, Libby.
Thank you.
It's terrifying.
You're having a little play around there.
I'm just having a little play with
you?
it, and I just said, open an image creator. And they say, well, I can't, but would you like me to find one for you? And it's just pinged all this stuff up. I mean, it's a bit like Google, only much more sophisticated, and you can ask it in a different way. You can ask it sort of use just more common language. I don't know. It's just we've got to get used to it.
And should we be relieved at the fact that Rishi Sunak is meeting these big tech bosses? The people who are in the know at the forefront of this technical change. Let us know what you think of it, or does it terrify you? Or do you think there are real positives in terms of the impact it could have on the medical or the science world? I
always think it's Pandora's box, though.
Yeah.
You can't close the lid. It's it now. It's out. But it is how you manage it. Anyway.
And can you manage it? That's the question. gbnews@gbnews.com.
Now, we've got all the sport heading away very shortly with Paul Coyte, and he'll have the latest on what they call the sort of most expensive football game because it's 170 million quid on the line as Coventry meet Luton at Wembley.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel, sort of find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:25, very nearly. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. Good morning to you.
And we're going through today's biggest sports stories now with Coity. Good morning to
Hello.
you. First of all, how was your lunch yesterday?
Oh, what, with Sir Jeff?
With Sir Jeff.
Very nice, very nice. And the thing is, I did say that this is Sir Jeff Hurst. I was going to say that I was going to try and avoid talking about World Cup 66. And I did start off by saying, I said, look, many years ago, I interviewed Tony Bennett. And I said to Tony Bennett, do you ever get sick of singing I Lost My Heart in San Francisco? And he said to me, do you ever get fed up with making love? Is what he said. That was his answer. And so that was what I tried and went to Sir Jeff and said, well, it's kind of simple. And then the eyes glazed over and I thought, I'm going nowhere with this. Tell me about the 1966 World Cup final. And by the way, do you know the words to I Lost My Heart in San Francisco?
Oh, yeah.
Which he didn't. So apart from that, it went extremely well. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes, he's looking very well. He's looking very well.
Now, it's good
and he sent his regards as well, by the way.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jeff.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, it's going to go extremely well for either Coventry or Luton today with a £170 million prize at the end of it.
You know what? It's funny you say £170 million because they say it's the richest game in football because to get to the Premier League, which is the promised land, that's where the big money is and that's where everybody wants to be playing. There's no real number on it. 170 is a new one. I've heard 100 million. I've heard 1 billion. You hear everything. But all it is, more importantly, is that they can get to the Premier League. And it's an amazing story. I mean, if you think Wrexham is good and everybody's talking about Wrexham, to have Luton Town or Coventry City in the Premier League is a huge story. Now, I'll give you a little background on both of them. Coventry when you were a boy...
Sky Blues.
Absolutely. They were in the First Division and they were always there and thereabouts. But then they started a slippery slope. They lost money. They had to move away from their stadium. The whole thing was a disaster and they were just falling down the leagues. So they were playing in League Two. So it looked like, the great days of Coventry are over. But now things have turned round. Now, we're looking at pictures there. Now, this is Luton. Now, Luton Town, who last played in the Premier League, although it was Division 1, so we're looking at 30 years now. This is their stadium. So this is the legendary Kenilworth Road. Now, you might think it's someone coming out of a garage there, but that is Kenilworth Road. From the inside, it looks very nice, but from the outside, it's pretty much in the middle of a housing estate. Now, it says the Oak Stand. Now, that's Oak Road. And that is the away end. So if you can imagine all the billionaires of the Premier League will go to Luton Town, little Luton Town. And I love that. I think it's great. That's the real romance of football, that they will then be going into this 10,000-seat stadium. And it's just so far away from how the Premier League is. But Luton have a great chance of doing it. They both do.
Who's your money on?
You know what? I really can't
You're
call
in your
this.
sky blue.
It's a good point, yeah. And because orange, I actually do think Luton could do this. Luton could do this, and they would be the first club to actually drop out of the leagues. They actually went in, they dropped out of League Two, and it's just a true fairy tale story that they've moved up and up and up, and now they're on the brink of the promised land. So it is £100 million game. It's at Wembley this afternoon. So both of them are a great story. So whoever wins certainly deserves to be there, and it will be a great addition to the Premier League, and I think everybody will love it.
Yeah, it's a great story.
It is. It's brilliant. It really is.
And I hope
fantastic.
Luton get a bit of an upgrade on their stadium.
Well, I think there'll be something. Well, what they need to do first is the floodlights, because apparently the floodlights aren't strong enough. So they're going to have to spend a load of money on that.
On lighting.
They're saying, because, it's got to look good for the Premier League, for the whole world. But as far as that away end goes, I think there's been talk about them building a new stadium. But as far as that away end goes, at the moment, they're happy with how it is. Yeah. But there's someone's house is above that. Can you imagine living in the house?
You have to go, over the terraced houses, don't you, to get into it?
To actually get in there. And if you go to Luton to try and find... It's difficult to find. And then you think, well, where is it? I remember going to see a game there and thinking, actually, I'm right next door to it. But there it is. Yeah. But you can't see it. But I love that. Old school football, bring it to these days. Fantastic.
At its best,
And by the way, one more thing, very quickly, is that their wage bill is probably less than most clubs will be paying agents for players. Yeah. So then that's the lowest wage bill in the whole of the Sky Championship.
That'll change. Well, you're coming back for another hit, apparently.
Am I?
Yeah.
I've only just got started. I do hope so.
You've only just got started. I know. We'll do the rest. I'm being yelled.
I'm very passionate about it, Stephen. What can I tell you?
I wanted to ask you about The Rock, but we'll save that for next time.
Yes, sir. We will.
Lovely, Coity. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about Tyson Fury, so I'm glad you're coming back. Now, coming up, ice cream sellers are moaning about Cadbury flakes being too crumbly. I can attest to that. I had one yesterday. We'll have more as we go through the papers with Emma Wolf and Alan Miller. That's next. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's see what's in the papers this morning, and let's have a look at some lighter note.
We need that.
We do need this morning. Now, Jan Leeming, if you're of an age, you will remember Jan Leeming. She was one of the newsreaders on BBC when it was, you know, a thing. Here she is, 81, and she's posing in a swimsuit, saying, why shouldn't older women wear swimsuits?
And she does look incredible, to be fair.
Great for 81. Good on her.
Looks wonderful. Let's stick with the Mirror, shall we? And the paper also features a lovely spread of Tina Turner in the arms of her dear friend, David Bowie.
The night Tina finally gave in to David Bowie. What's she doing?
Oh.
Promised a duet with him. I don't know.
Maybe.
The Times have got an article about foreign teachers getting 10 grand, apparently, if they want to come and work in England. Apparently, there's gaps in mathematics and science.
And finally, The Guardian says the UK could go into another recession before the next general election.
Let's see what writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, make of all of these. Morning, you two. What's this in the inside of the FT weekend, Alan, about the United States and their borrowing limit?
Yes. So, well, they're about to hit their limit in borrowing, and they are posed as being a financial catastrophe is how the FT puts it, maybe slightly melodramatic, but there's a massive issue, which is that the United States has got to the point now where its debt ceiling is being reached, and it's seeking to get it overturned, to go further, to get raised, so it can, guess what, allow more debt. This doesn't really resolve the issues that it's attempting to address, the things like Medicare, the provision of health and social security, as well as a range of other areas. And it seems like neither within the majority of the Republicans or the Democrats has anyone really got to grips with this in terms of addressing what this means. Obviously, for the markets, it's very important, and internationally. But the big problem behind all of this, of course, is that the liabilities are huge. We have this idea that the federal government, will be able to insure and back things around bonds and the markets. But actually, as we've seen with some of the banks that are failing and some runs, we are likely to face a similar thing that's happened in 2008 and earlier, because if you don't have the credit, if you don't actually have real money and people start making a claim on things, that creates a real serious issue.
I mean, this is why we've got to be very aware of this, because I said that the subprime mortgage market situation in 2008 was based in the States, and as soon as it started to run there, it affected all of us. And this is a problem. If we have a run in the States on this, we're going to feel it very quickly afterwards.
It's absolutely true, and that's why some of the discussions around the interest rates, people's mortgages in the UK, the gilt markets here, it all sounds like, which it is, it's sort of financial techno-speak, but the reality is that we've got a situation where we haven't got enough wealth that's been created in investment in infrastructure and development, and instead it's the over-financialisation of things and an ageing population and a lack of getting to grips with infrastructure. It needs to get handled.
Emma, let's take a look at the Telegraph, shall we? And this is their headline: 3 times more patients on mixed wards than before the pandemic.
Yeah, this is really interesting and really important story, actually. We're not meant to have mixed wards, and there are meant to be fines for the... No, we're not meant to have mixed wards.
Rule against it, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's meant to be fines for the NHS every time they breach that of £250, unless there are certain circumstances. And since there are now 3 times more patients on mixed wards than since before the pandemic, and campaigners are saying that mixed wards are actually an affront to patient dignity. When you stop and think about it, in hospitals you have a lot of older people, obviously, because of people being poorly. You have people with, well, medical conditions. It's actually not really appropriate to have mixed wards. So there used to be this penalty of £250. Now that fine has been dropped. And in the last 6 months, in the 6 months up to March, for the figures available, the rule was broken over 25,000 times. And I'm just thinking about visiting, elderly relatives in hospital, being in hospital myself, that kind of thing. It is quite a sensitive issue. If you're in a ward of, I don't know, older men, do you really want older ladies having to have their medical treatment? Obviously, you have a curtain around. I just think there's lots and lots of reasons here why actually sticking with the old-fashioned system of having women on women's wards and men on men's wards. You're looking very, very unconvinced with me, Stephen.
I am unconvinced.
Really?
I've got to be honest, because it's been a long time since I was ever admitted in hospital, nearly 30 years ago. But that was a mixed ward. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's not nice. I mean, the things go on, but the curtains are shut. You're afforded as much privacy if the bed next door to you is filled with an old fella or an old lady. You think what difference does it make?
No, I do. I think of visiting my elderly father, and I remember old men wandering up and down with the backs of their gowns hanging open, and even as a female visitor, you would feel a little bit embarrassed to be amongst a group of older men being, my last experience in hospital was having a baby, so I'm assuming that those wards would be kept all female. But no, I think it's actually worth maintaining. There's a reason why we have single-sex wards, and, there are medical reasons. I don't know what you think.
Well, I think the other thing we need to address is that if you look at Germany and other places in Europe where they've got different approaches towards healthcare, you've got many more individual rooms, like you have in the States, but with a different model, a mixed version of response. So, and that, in the discussion of any pandemic and a range of other things, also benefits. And why is it that we can't curate things in a way around what we need and design those things and come up with it? And that
I just think, shouldn't we be... I mean, yeah, maybe in an ideal world, shouldn't we just be focusing on having nurses rather than worried about who's in the wards?
I think if you ask patients, would you prefer to be admitted right now, would you prefer to be admitted onto a single-sex ward or a mixed ward? I think most people would say that they would prefer to be with ladies only or men only.
Yeah, but wouldn't they, if you also added into the mix, would you prefer
to have... Would you prefer nurses and doctors and...
They'd go for that, wouldn't they?
First world treatment, yes, of course they would.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the Mail, should we? It's the Equality Chief witch hunt. What's going on?
Yes, well, this is actually a really good story that's in terms of the result, which is that the Equality and Human Rights Commission has now had a probe put on ice. And this was the head of...
Sounds like a medical story.
Yeah, whereas the head, Kishore Faulkner, Baroness, was being accused of all sorts of things because of her commitment to women's rights and equality, actually. And what has transpired is that over 50 peers have written in, and in addition to that, there was a Channel 4 piece coverage that has been called a hit job by some, which is kind of focusing on very, very banal points in terms of what they're alleging she's done in terms of her conduct. But the primary push has been that she's said the unsayable, that the equality right somehow should not be equality when it comes to women in the context of the trans activists, not trans people, but trans activists agenda, which seems to have penetrated many of the institutions and the public sector. And I think this is another example of some very brave women, frankly, who've got out and in front of this story and brought it to the public. And now many more people are aware of it. And I think so, therefore, this is really good that this has happened. And where we see in attempts to cancel people who don't fit into the certain criteria of a shrill particular activist group, that this reflects something that's an antidote to that.
Yes, I don't know. I need to look at what...
And Baroness Faulkner was only defending absolutely legal... You know, she was talking about women having safe spaces and things like that, which are, you know, legally protected in law. It seems that staff from within her organisation... She was devastated by this, terribly, terribly upset by these attacks. And I think it's absolutely right that at least it should be suspended while, the facts can be established, rather than, as you say, Alan, someone just being cancelled for daring to speak out against this kind of shrill hysteria.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah. I just saw that with all of this, we talk, the shrill hysteria, and maybe it's not handled in the right way, but you've got to expect people who are feeling excluded to have their say.
Well, having a say is fine. That's a good thing to do. Free speech is really important. When women have said that in refuges and in certain places that are meant to be safe, they want to have places for women to be there, and then you get attempts to cancel that person for doing that, that is not having your say. That is trying to dictate policy and shut down opposition. And that's where the issue is, because having your say is not being masked and punching people on a demonstration. No. And I think that that's where the boundaries around free speech, discussion. I think Britain's very tolerant. We want to discuss these things, and actually, we are very welcoming to all sorts of people's decisions and choices. This is an activist.
But we need to make sure that we listen to the other side as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Which sometimes doesn't happen. Can we have a look at apologies if you're having your breakfast this morning in The Guardian, Emma?
Oh dear, can't we talk about
sewage.
99 flakes? This is such a disgusting story.
We can,
OK. You want to go on to the raw sewage story?
Yes.
It's a really important one, especially with the holidays coming up and lovely weather. And I don't know why, and I include myself in this, why we haven't really got angry about this, about the billions of litres of water. So 11 billion litres of raw sewage were discharged into our rivers in 1 year. This is from a range of 30 water companies. And the strange thing is that they have to reveal figures of such as how many of these wretched raw sewage discharges happened and how long these spillages lasted for, but not the volume of the water, of the raw sewage that's been discharged into our rivers. So, water companies is another one of those areas where they've sort of got away with it, and they've been paying themselves dividends and bonuses for a long, long time, and it's an absolute scandal. Last summer, we saw many beaches, on our green and pleasant lands or on our beaches being closed because of absolutely filthy water, excrement, human waste, all sorts, in our rivers and seas and our waterways.
Oh, it's an absolute scandal.
It's a disgrace, but they've said they're going to tackle it now, but we're going to have to pay the bill.
I've read that many times over the past few months.
This is why the public needs to be at the heart of any decision-making and what the services and provision in terms of our infrastructure. People sometimes get worried about what they say is a big plan, but I think we've got a problem that we don't have enough big plans, and that we've got a situation where what our needs and the efficiency of our organisations are not put at the forefront, and that's something that's critical.
We have an outdated water system, don't we? I mean, we're pretty much running on a Victorian system still.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere like London, you see...
tenfold, isn't it?
Yeah, they dig up roads for literally months at a time, and you say, well, what's going on? And they say, well, we've got these old, Victorian pipes and everything.
Well, they do.
But is it because we don't see it? Is it because most of us don't see the stuff that's floating in our seas?
Well, many of us have. I mean, many of us have experienced it. But, in Australia, for instance, they've got really innovative, huge pipes that they're putting in, and there are ways of investing in infrastructure to transform it. It's about our attitude and approach and priorities.
Well, this should be a priority, shouldn't it? I mean, clean water. You'd literally
Basic.
be up
Really
there. It's
basic.
just basic.
Yeah.
It is
And
basic.
for people who live in coastal communities, I mean, you can quite literally smell it.
Yes.
I've been down to Whitstable for a story before, and I spoke to someone who got very, very sick. So they're a sea swimmer. And once you're in it, it could look clean, but you don't know until you're literally swimming in it. And then you can get yourself very, very sick.
Oh, dear.
So
people having their breakfast are not going to be feeling very,
But, you know, for people who live in
apologise.
coastal communities, that's really, you know, it's something they see daily.
Extremely grim.
Yeah.
Extremely grim. You, Les, now this is very much a London-centric story. Apologise if you're not in London on this one, the Telegraph, Alan. But the ultra-low emission zone, which I have never quite got my head around.
Yeah. So the ultra-low emission zone, we have one in central London. This is to expand it to the outer areas that the mayor currently, Sadiq Khan, has said needs to happen. It's to charge £12.50 for cars that are non-compliant. He says...
Which is what, basically just older cars?
Older cars from 2016. He says 1 in 10, but obviously there are many more. And actually 50% of vans outside of London are not compliant. And it's an interesting story because Ellie Reeves, who's the Labour MP and shadow minister, is concerned about pensioners and people in social care and the impacts across the board for that. And I do think that, whilst you say it's a London story, we've seen that there's a clean air zone in the Midlands that many people, over 70,000 people, have not been able to pay. And it's actually come out that the Labour Party has plans to implement these measures across the UK. If it was to get elected, it has tabled these issues. Local authorities have a number of road closure plans with low traffic neighbourhoods. And in fact, today at London Bridge, there's a rally that's challenging some of these things. But we've seen several councils across London and outside are doing a judicial review against the Mayor of London. And some are standing on their next mayoral election to challenge this outright. The question is, of course, why there's a disregard. You see across the board, Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative, Independents, many people are opposed to this blanket imposition. And yet the mayor seems to keep repeating platitudes that are now patently not true, like 4,000 deaths. We've got Keir Starmer saying it leads to lung cancer. Somehow, if you pay £12.50, you don't get lung cancer. It's contemptuous of the public. I think also what it would actually do is it raise a lot of money, and we have surveillance cameras everywhere. But is it really going to address the question of air quality, which has improved so much in the last 30 years in London and across the UK? So I think that's why people are rallying today at London Bridge, and that's why people are very, very opposed to it, even within the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And it's very, very unfair on older, poorer people who have these older, polluting, so-called cars. Yes, if you want to have everyone in electric cars, well, then you need to put the infrastructure in. At the moment, we don't have enough charging points for, you know, the amount of people that do have electric cars. So it's a really... And there seems to be no way to challenge all this. So, you know, I think Sadiq Khan has some questions to answer.
30 seconds, Emma, tell us about flakes.
OK, ice cream, 99 crumbly flakes. The crumbliest, milkiest, what was it? The crumbliest, flakiest milk chocolate in the world. You remember the advert?
Yeah.
Anyway, these things are falling apart. Ice cream sellers are up in arms about this. They take them out of the boxes because they've moved production of them. Take them out of the boxes and they just fall apart. They're wasting huge amounts of money. Some of the ice cream sellers are saying, you know, I'm serving trays of ice cream with flake sprinkled on top because I physically can't put a flake. Imagine this, Stephen. Can't put a flake into a 99 ice cream. It's a scandal. And it's actually in all the papers today.
Yeah.
This 99 flake is a national emergency.
It is a
I think we need a
national
rally
emergency.
about that.
What are you doing, Cadbury's?
Yeah.
Sort it out.
We need to have words with you, because lots of people might be having an ice cream on a bank holiday weekend. Exactly.
It's not the same if you've got to...
Very much.
Roll it in.
Exactly.
If you're an ice cream seller and you've got boxes and boxes of these faulty flakes, send them in. We shall sample them to see how they're working.
Yeah, and then we'll chat to Cadbury's.
Then we'll chat to Cadbury's. But we need to do a taste test first.
But lots of people could be having an ice cream this weekend because it is, of course, the bank holiday, and it's meant to be a very warm weekend as well. So you can safely say, alongside the ice cream, lots of people could be going to festivals.
Yes, but of course, music fans, like everybody else, are wanting to save a few pennies because it's a blooming expensive thing to do.
Well, our GB News East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has been speaking to music lovers at Glaston Budget in Leicestershire, with tickets to the festival costing around a third of the price of the bigger ones.
In the East Midlands, the rhythm of the countryside quickens to the thumping heartbeat of a party.
It is very nearly the start of the summer music festival season. We're at the end of May, but all of these people are getting in the mood here at Glaston Budget. We're right in the heart of Leicestershire. It's a tribute band music festival. It costs a little bit less than some of those big music festivals, and that's why loads of people are coming here to spend their bank holiday in this way.
Reaching its 19th year, Glaston Budget returns at exactly the right time. Sky-high inflation is forcing music fans to abandon dreams of top-tier festivals.
Well, the weather's great for it. So
yeah, been before?
A couple of years ago.
Events manager John O says that Glaston Budget is trying to make festivals a reality for everyone.
There is massive cost infrastructure for a festival for us, but we really try and keep as close as possible to that to keep the prices as low as possible.
Stuart's been on the circuit for decades, but wonders how this season will play out.
Maybe there might be a change in people's habits, you know, spending cash, maybe trying to conserve a little bit more. And I wouldn't blame them if they did, but all of our expenses have gone up.
Only a few hundred people showed up for the first Budget Festival in 2005. Now 15,000 are expected over the bank holiday. Many have been before.
It works because it's cheap and it's a whole weekend.
We get the tickets and the early bird, so they're cheaper anyway.
It is really good value, but the bands are really good.
It's only camping, but some have brought enough gear to stay for weeks.
What haven't I brought? Literally everything.
Beer, tent, sleeping bag, money.
I have actually just had my hip resurfaced, so perhaps I shouldn't be doing this, but I am doing it anyway, so yeah.
Most of the acts are tribute bands like Antarctic Monkeys and Motor Headache, clever puns for crisp-sounding copies. This is Jack's second year here, performing as Ed Sheeran.
Being an Ed Sheeran act, obviously we've got like loads of hits to play, and just have one big sing-along. That's the idea, just have one big messy sing-along.
Before the pandemic, around 5 million Brits were partying at music festivals. That number will likely drop while prices are high. But smaller music festivals may be catching those that can't bear a summer without one. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicestershire.
I still wouldn't fancy it.
I
still wouldn't fancy it.
No,
festival.
neither would I. I went to the last festival I went to. I had to bring my mum and ask her to pick me up.
Did you really? Was that last year?
No, it was about, I'd say, 10 years ago. I didn't want to stay overnight. It was too much for me.
Oh, really? So you didn't stay at all?
No, I stayed at Beyonce. It was the festival in Essex. It was a very tame festival, it must be said. But I watched Beyonce, I had enough, rang my mum, went home.
Pick me up. Yeah.
Had a shower.
Fair enough. No, I think that's not a bad idea, actually. Love that. Look, we've got all the top stories heading your way very shortly. First, though, here's your weather.
Morning, this is your latest weather update for GB News from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin and the weather looks pretty good this weekend if you like it dry and fine. It will turn a little cooler over the next couple of days and some of the beaches will be a little fresh, but generally we've got high pressure controlling things, bringing a lot of dry and pretty sunny weather too. Now there is this weather front pushing into northern Scotland, so a fairly drab start to the weekend here. A little bit of rain just trickling at the moment down across the Highlands. That's tending to fizzle out as it sinks southwards, so central belt, eastern Scotland, mostly dry, just clouding over a little. For much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells. There's a bit of a breeze on some coasts, bringing a fresher feel, and still a fairly brisk wind blowing over northern Scotland. But here, after a grey start, it may actually brighten up a bit this afternoon. Elsewhere in the sunshine, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23, 24 across parts of the Midlands and perhaps South Wales and southwest England. So feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. It'll cloud over a bit this evening over central and then southern Scotland, and we'll see more clouds spilling in across eastern parts of England overnight. But again, most places are going to have a dry night with clear spells. Just a hint of blue on the chart there. Perhaps in some rural spots, again across Scotland, temperatures may dip down close to freezing. So a bit of a chilly start on Sunday morning, but again,
Most places having a fine day. It will be a cloudier day, perhaps across these eastern counties of England. But even here, I suspect that cloud will break up a little bit as we go through the day and we'll see sunny spells. And a brighter day over the highlands of Scotland and the Western Isles. Notice this breeze just coming in across these eastern coastal counties of England. That is going to bring a fresher feel and generally not as warm on Sunday. Slightly lower the temperatures tomorrow, but still in the south likely to get up to 20 degrees, maybe more. Monday also set fair. Again, a little cooler perhaps, but still some sunshine for most of us. Goodbye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. What are you laughing? This professional programme we're presenting. Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's what is it? Saturday, the 27th of May. Good to have you with us. Today, our main news: Phillip Schofield quits ITV after admitting an affair with a young male colleague this morning. Also today, Brits have been hit by bank holiday and half-term travel chaos, with hundreds of drivers stuck in queues and flights cancelled.
Rishi Sunak is scrambling to update the government's approach to regulating artificial intelligence amid warnings that the industry poses an existential risk to humanity. And the richest game in football sees Coventry and Luton meet today at Wembley for place in the Premier League.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Oh, it's all too much. She's not in tomorrow.
No.
Such a relief.
Oh,
Such a relief.
You're going to miss me tomorrow.
It's the existential.
Existential.
Line. It was the what?
Existential. Existential.
It's every hour.
Existential. Existential. Existential.
Existential.
Existential.
It's just every hour. It's cracked me up every hour.
But they put it that way. It's intentional.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dear me. Well, I hope you're having a bit of a smile this morning, as we are. I feel a bit delirious. I overslept this morning, it throws you right off kilter all morning.
But you made it, thank goodness.
Yes, did make it. Maybe I should have been replaced by AI. Though Jane says, because the PM's talking about AI legislation, all this sort of stuff, Jane says, it terrifies me. It's all very Terminator. Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah, Colin's on the same theme, saying AI reminds me of Skylab in the Terminator film. Very scary if it ever got into our defence systems.
Yeah, in a way, they're talking more about sort of the deep fake misinformation side of it now, but it's all interrelated. Jack says, I got my degree last year, before all the AI stuff, that's Chat GPT, which apparently can write essays for you, I don't know. But Jack says, how do employers know if a degree is real or not? Yeah.
Well, I think schools are going to have to go old school and do exams in exams halls and not have any
all
coursework.
Handwritten.
Yeah, all handwritten in an exam hall, in exam conditions. You won't be able to do coursework and things because there's no way of telling whether it's generated by a chat bot or a student's own work. There's no way of testing it at the moment.
No, which is the worrying thing. I have to say, you've got to try to understand it, though, which is where I'm failing a little bit on things like the Chat GPT, because it's just, everything had to be... There wasn't even computers in schools when I was at school.
Oh, yeah, we had an IT suite. And
Did you?
We got walked to the IT suite and then you could be given 20 minutes on the computer.
Oh.
Yeah.
We did have a computer lab at university, but I never went in it because it just didn't seem necessary.
Really? So did you write everything by hand?
Everything was written by hand, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I did my dissertation, I had to then pay someone in Nottingham to type it up. Wow. Type up my 10,000 words, and then you got it bound and all that sort of thing.
You had to really have that done with time to spare.
Yeah.
Have it typed up.
Took ages to get it typed up.
It wasn't like before job.
No.
Wow.
No, different world.
Yeah, and things changing quickly now. I mean, now you can literally ask ChatGPT to write your essay for you. Just put in the title and you just say, write me an essay, 1,500 words on this. And they just do it for you.
See, I hate to say it, but you can be very critical of young people. But if you were young now, would you do that? I'm pretty sure I would. Get caught out, probably. Because if you do that, you're just not learning anything, are you? That's the thing. Are we going to have a generation of young people who really don't know anything? Because they've just had it all sort of just done for them. But then how did you manage before Google? Before internet searches?
I always think that.
You had to
go... maps on your phone, how did anyone find anything?
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't get anywhere without maps on my phone.
No, I don't know how we managed. How did we cope before microwaves? That's another one.
That's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sat-navs. I mean, the list goes on. What do you make of AI? Does it terrify you? Does it bring you hope? In the advances it can make in the medical world or the science world? Let us know. gbnews@gbnews.com is our new email address.
And while you're thinking about that, let's tell you about what everyone's talking about this morning. It's across all the newspapers, and it was an exclusive statement that Phillip Schofield gave to the Mail, actually, yesterday, announcing that he'd already left this morning, but still had stuff underway with ITV. Anyway, that's all gone. The ITV deal has gone after he's admitted to having an affair with a young male colleague this morning.
Well, the presenter has also been dropped by his talent agency, YMU, who represented him for over 35 years.
Well, let's speak to the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Good morning to you, Charlotte. I mean, look, this really is everywhere. Mail exclusive that's been picked up by absolutely everybody this morning. Is it the end of his career, do you think?
I think it must be for the foreseeable future. The fact that he's left YMU was, I think, one of the most shocking things about all of this, because he owns shares in that company and he's been in it, as you say, for over 30 years. And Holly was, of course, famously on the books of YMU, but mysteriously left about 2 years ago. And now I'm sort of wondering, why did she leave? I mean, ostensibly it was to set up her own all-female agency, but the timing of it is all quite odd. And yeah, if he can't actually keep his own agency, which he has shares in, then spells the end of his career, I would have thought.
Charlotte, can you tell us, I mean, you obviously are editor-at-large at the Mail. Is there more to come on this story?
Yeah, I'm editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, I should say that, because we're still slightly separate. But hats off to my sister paper, the Mail, because they didn't take no for an answer on this. And it's really unprecedented to have Phillip Schofield actually say the words that, you know, I lied to the Daily Mail in his own statement. And it was real testament to how the paper, you know, suspected he wasn't telling the truth, trusted its sources and kept going. So that was, you know, I'm very proud of my sister paper for that one.
Well, what do you make... I mean, there are various elements in the statement which are particularly interesting. The one that stood out to me, where he said the relationship with this young man, which, I don't know when it would have been, 4 or 5 years ago, he said it was unwise but not illegal. And what struck me was the fact that you've got to clarify that point.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's addressing some rumours which haven't been reported in print, that they started their friendship before he turned 18. And there is some evidence on Twitter that they followed each other on Twitter before he turned 18. But you're right, it's an unusual thing to bring up out of the blue. And sorry, in answer to your previous question, you know, it does beg the question, is there more to come? Was he getting ahead of this? It seems quite clear he probably was getting ahead of something. And he knows there's more to come. And maybe there'll be something in that area that will come out in the next few days.
And of course, there's going to be questions now about what ITV knew, especially what ITV bosses knew, and when.
Yes, so Carolyn McCall, Kevin Lygo and Martin Frizzell are the big names to watch out for in the papers over the next few days, because they had very close relationships with him. And, you know, 1 or 2 of them have been described in the newspapers as used to clearing up his mess. So we'll have to stand by and find out what kind of messes he's been getting into behind the scenes that, according to reports, editors there knew about. And then, of course, there's Holly, who'll be absolutely desperate not to be linked into any speculation that she knew that there was something going on. And, of course, she got well ahead of this by threatening, you know, a fortnight ago to leave ITV if they didn't get rid of him. So it seems that she may have known something but stood her ground. Again, she left YMU 2 years ago. So there'll be a lot of speculation coming up about who knew what and when. And yeah, I think it could be a very busy week for ITV in the next week.
Hold on, let me pull you up on that, Charlotte, because that's not a line we've heard before. Holly Willoughby threatened to leave ITV unless they got rid of him. Is that right?
Well, there were a lot of reports, weren't there, that the reason why he resigned was because she said, it's him or me, I want to go it alone. And he was quite clear in his statement that his departure was unrelated to all this. But the timing is just quite coincidental. And, you know, I'm not saying Holly is related to this, but Holly will want to make sure she's not one of those names that comes up as bosses or people at ITV in This Morning who knew about this.
Where do you think this leaves Holly Willoughby? Because she's on this extended half-term break at the moment. She's meant to be back on the 5th of June. But she has been in a partnership with Phillip Schofield for the last 14 years. How possible is it going to be for her to go it alone on This Morning?
Yeah, I think she can make a good partnership with somebody like Alison Hammond. And as you two know, it's nice to have a genuine rapport. And I think she did have that with Phil for a time. And their corpsing was very entertaining. After a while, I think it became quite stilted and perhaps even contrived. I think it'll be possible for her to carry on. She's got to find a great new teammate. I think Alison could be the one. And I think ITV will continue with This Morning. There's been some speculation today that can it survive this? But I think if they find a really good partnership and keep it light, it should do.
But the problem with this is that all harks back to the who knew what and when, doesn't it? Which does affect Holly in all of this, because as you well know, as remarkable as it is that he's given this statement, certainly with insiders, this was the worst kept secret in showbiz.
Yes, but he also said very clearly in his statement, "I lied to everyone around me." But yes, there was a video of him having lunch in a cafe with this young man. Although I think he was 18 at the time. So it was the worst kept secret. You have to take him at his word. Holly must have asked him about this. People around him must have asked him about this, and he must have lied. That's what he said, and that's all we know right now.
ITV's reaction to this is really interesting, isn't it? Because when Phillip Schofield stepped down initially six days ago, ITV were very, very quick to say in their statement that he would continue with ITV. He'd be presenting other programmes. They did seem quite keen to hold on to him as a talent. But then on This Morning, the actual television programme, there was just that very, very short 30-second goodbye tribute from Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary. They seemed to be at odds with one another, didn't they? It's almost as if they knew that this was coming down the track.
Yeah, I think their 30 seconds was very cautiously written. It focused a lot on his skill as a broadcaster and not on his personality. There wasn't anything alluding to him being a warm member of the ITV family. There was nothing warm about that statement, was there? I have to say, I remember saying on GBNews that week, God, I'm surprised they did anything at all. If I were them, I would have bided my time and not really done anything. But I suppose they had to acknowledge it in some way. But you're right. I think it does indicate that they were being extremely cautious, perhaps anticipating there might be more to come down the road on this.
And in terms of more to come, are we going to see things in the Mail on Sunday tomorrow?
I'm sure there'll be plenty more revelations. Of course, our newspaper is ahead of the game on this at all times. Katie Hines done an amazing job, who's really leading all these articles. And she was the one who was issued with this incredible statement yesterday. There'll be much more to come in tomorrow's paper.
OK, well, we look forward to reading that. Charlotte Griffiths, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
So you might want to buy a paper tomorrow if this is a story that interests you. It sounds as though there's more to come on this.
Which is not good news for... The only thing I would say, and Stephanie touched on this in the last hour, actually, and it's in no way a defence, it's purely on an absolutely human level. I'd be a bit worried about him. I hope someone is actually keeping an eye... Whatever the truth is, whatever's gone on, I hope someone's keeping an eye on him, because the entire world, and maybe because of his own doing and his own fault, but his entire world has just collapsed.
Yeah.
Now, and it gives me a little bit of concern, actually. So I hope someone's keeping it. He's probably down with his mother at the minute, because he goes down...
He is very close to his mum. And it's been, again, not making excuses, but it has been a tough time for his mother, especially with
hasn't it just? His brother's just gone to prison.
Sentenced, yeah.
And now this.
I feel for his mother, his wife and his daughters in this situation.
Yeah, but it's
the family as well who will be really impacted by all of this.
Yeah,
in a world of social media, it's people saying things.
But also, actually, the young man involved in all of this. I mean, the statement goes on, makes a point saying, we're not naming him. Want his family to be able to get on with this. Clearly, it's had a big impact on his life, because his name is out there. It's been out there for 3 years. And it's clearly had an impact on him and what he can do in terms of his job. He was trying to be an actor at one stage. It's like all of that grinds to a halt as well. So it affects a lot of people.
Yeah, very difficult for him as well. Yeah, more to come tomorrow, potentially.
Yes.
Well, of course, you will bring that
Yeah, Dawn Neeson and me tomorrow.
Dawn Neeson tomorrow.
So we'll keep you fully abreast of all of that.
Now, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called accusations that he broke further COVID-19 lockdown rules as a load of absolute nonsense. Mr Johnson would not say who he believes is trying to stitch him up. He said that the Cabinet Office decision to give entries from his official diary during the pandemic to police without first querying them with him was ridiculous.
The electric bike ridden by two teenagers as they were killed in a crash was apparently an early birthday present given to 15-year-old Harvey Evans, who died alongside 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan in Cardiff. The police watchdog is investigating after footage showed a police van following the teens just before their death.
The warm weather is set to continue over this bank holiday weekend, with highs of 24 degrees possible in southeast Wales and around the Bristol Channel today and tomorrow. The Met Office says the forecast will continue into next week.
And you're having a BBQ tonight, aren't you?
I'm having a BBQ. Can't wait. And I need a plan for tomorrow because I don't want to waste the day. Sorry, I know.
Oh, no, yeah.
But then I'm on a 7-day marathon. That's why I've got tomorrow off, so that I can then go from Monday to Sunday.
Ah, yes.
My 7 days.
Which is a lot. Have some sympathy, because getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning.
2:45.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, it's early for you.
It is early, yes.
It's hard work. If you're a shift worker, you'll appreciate that. There you go. But yes, and so enjoy the day tomorrow.
Thank you.
Put on the factor 50.
Of course, always, every day. And then I might try and head to the beach for something. Just I don't want to waste the weather. I know lots of British people feel like that, don't they? When it's a sunny day, you have to be outside. You have to do something with it. You've got a lovely garden, so you'll be sad.
Yeah, you're not coming to my garden tomorrow.
No, I thought I'd get a little...
No, not a chance. Oh, what a lovely Sunday afternoon, entertaining you. Loving it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Want a break tomorrow, don't you?
Oh, she's like, oh, can I have another glass of wine, doll?
Yeah.
You want to be like,
oh,
terrible.
Yeah, get on the rosé. Mm-hmm.
Actually, maybe I should invite you up. It could be a laugh.
Yeah,
we shall see. Now, the Prime Minister is working on an international treaty for artificial intelligence, which could potentially lead to a global regulator.
Well, this comes just days after Rishi Sunak met with American big tech leaders, where they discussed the risks that AI poses for disinformation.
Let's talk to political commentator Suzanne Evans, who joins us now. Morning to you. What do you make of all of this? I mean, we might be running a little bit behind the curve when it comes to AI, but the fact that the PM seems to be leading the way globally is quite impressive, isn't it?
Well, actually, Britain isn't running behind the curve on AI. There's something called a global AI index, and we are actually third in that ranking, only behind the US and China. So it's understandable that this is something really that is very much on Rishi Sunak's radar. The government sees AI as one of its top 5 technologies that it wants to invest in and develop in the future. And in fact, it's already pumped in around $2.5 billion into artificial intelligence. But of course, ministers, the government are also very, very worried about this, because the potential of it is really the stuff of science fiction. Potentially this can totally transform our lives. You know, we've already had instances where we know that photographs can be faked, music can be cloned to make it sound like the original bands, but it isn't. We've had the scenario of students using artificial intelligence to write their essays. What future for academia there? Perhaps some of us have had that experience where we phone a company, we think we're talking to a person, and it's not until much further down the line that actually, no, we're just talking to a computer. So there is a huge amount of concern about how artificial intelligence can be used for bad as well as good. The government's done a white paper on it a few months ago. Culture Secretary Michelle Donnellan was absolutely gushing there about artificial intelligence, talking about its potential to save lives within the NHS and to be able to empower the police, transport networks, climate scientists, public services to make the UK what she called the smartest, healthiest, safest and happiest place to live. But there is now more focus on the negative. And I think this has come about since some of the big tech bosses, like Elon Musk, like Geoffrey Hinton, who's arguably the godfather of AI, who basically kicked it all off with his work with Google, have raised the alarm. Hinton, in fact, resigned, saying he regretted his work because of the potential it had to allow bad actors to do bad things. Musk has said it's got the potential to assume control of humanity, either to or take control of us and become some kind of Uber nanny for the human race. So understandably, people are concerned. And Rishi Sunak's obviously now perhaps waking up to some of the downsides of the technology, as well as the positive implications for it.
And Susanna, it is that U-turn, isn't it? That is so fascinating, because in that white paper, as you say, very gushing of the positives of this sort of technology. And then we have this meeting with Rishi Sunak and the tech bosses, and we're talking about a need for an international treaty or perhaps even a global regulator. But it does highlight the fact, doesn't it, that it's going to be very, very difficult to regulate AI, because the way that we make legislation is a long process. It's laborious, and it's almost as though we'll always be behind the curve in terms of how quickly this tech develops.
Exactly. And I think that tech people will say that that white paper is now hopelessly out of date. It was also very light on any kind of regulatory advice or concerns. So yeah. Legislation takes a long time. And it's also, of course, we're not just operating in isolation here. We could, with the best will in the world, do a deal with the USA or some other countries and say, right, this is how we're going to handle it. This is how we're going to regulate it. This is how we're going to make sure we don't have that science fiction doomsday scenario where it completely takes over humanity. This is how we're going to stop that. But there are going to be other countries out there that are not going to buy into that. You know, I said earlier, China's one of the top 3 leaders in this. Is China going to really take advice from Britain and the United States on how it should progress with its own industries? I don't think so. There are always going to be scientists that push the boundaries, push that frontier, and are going to want to go above and beyond what they can do in law. And of course, the thing about artificial intelligence is, can you teach it ethics? I'm not sure. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But I think that's going to be very, very difficult. I think it's going to be nigh on impossible to get a global consensus that people, every country, actually sticks to. It is potentially a kind of world-threatening James Bond scenario. There's no doubt about it.
To watch more Star Trek, Suzanne. All the androids have ethical subroutines. They all have ethical subroutines in their positronic nets. Let me tell you. Good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, she's laughing, but it's true. Star Trek...
Oh, here we go.
No, but Star Trek has predicted everything that happens.
It's like The Simpsons.
But not quite like The Simpsons, no. But the, you know, mobile phone technology and all this sort of thing, even warp speed, which is warping space-time, which is, of course, what they're looking at now to actually get us to other planets. It's all phenomenal, actually. It's terrifying how accurate it's been. So, yes.
It is a bit, actually.
Ethical subroutines, there you go.
Well, thank you. Every day is a school day. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Now, up next, dog owners have been warned about a plant which could harm their pets. Find out more after this. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Ah, yes, good morning, good morning.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Now, let's talk about dog owners across the country. Been asked to stay alert for hemlock. Now, you can't miss hemlock. I mean, it's got a reputation for being poisonous. Surely you know that. It's all in every Agatha Christie novel going. Hemlock, and it's everywhere. It's all over the place. But apparently some dogs have been having a go and, as a result, been particularly ill. Some have even died as a result.
Oh, well, let's speak to dog behaviourist Anna Webb, who joins us now with her beloved Mr Binks.
Oh, morning, Mr Binks.
Morning, Mr Binks. Morning, Anna. Great to have you both with us. Hello. So, hemlock, tell us about it. Is it easy enough to spot, as Stephen suggests?
Well, absolutely. Well, it's quite a tall plant and it's got kind of white fluffy bits at the top. And the thing is, really, what I would recommend is avoid your dog chewing anything that you don't know what it is. Mr Binks is just eating a tasty treat here. I know what it is. That's absolutely fine. So any plants could be toxic to a dog, really, because every dog is an individual. And yeah, the hemlock, it's also known as the water dropwort plant. It's been known since ancient Greek time for being terribly toxic. It emits these alkaloids, which then starts to suffocate a dog. So really not very good. So you as an owner need to have all the focus tools in place to distract your dog from eating anything you think might be a bit dodgy. And that goes for picnic debris as well, other plants, sticks. You know, there might be a bit of bone, chicken bone left over in the park at the moment because of picnics. You need to have the focus tools to get your dog away from anything possibly toxic.
I mean, would dogs want to eat hemlock? Does it have an appeal to them?
Well, dogs like eating plants. You'll see dogs nibbling on nice, juicy grass. That's okay in moderation, okay, because grass has got lots of good minerals and vitamins in. You know, I've never seen my dogs eat any hemlock. What I've heard is that it really smells rather grim. It smells like mouse pee, which, you know, might be appealing to some dogs, but generally, you know, it's telling dogs, stay away. You know, nature's got this wonderful way of balancing and informing other more natural creatures to stay away. So I don't think they'd find it particularly tasty, to be honest. And they might be just eating it for attention seeking. They might be a bit bored, you know, so you need to distract them.
And what is your advice if a person suspects that their dog has eaten hemlock or any other poisonous plant?
Well, take them to the vet, really, and try and get the actual plant that your dog was eating so the vet knows exactly what it is, and then they can treat it accordingly. And there's lots of summer dangers out there at the moment, not least adders. They are an indigenous snake to this country. They can mask themselves and look like a tiny stick, and their bite is really venomous and, you know, can be fatal also. You've also got to bear in mind the hot temperatures. It's quite a sudden change at the moment. You've got to look at a sunny day from your dog's perspective because dogs overheat very, very quickly, particularly in hot cars. So if you're traveling to the seaside or whatever today, bear in mind your dog could be a bit overstressed in the back of the car without lots of training to travel, you know, in the car. Dogs that are stressed in the car get hotter in the car because stress is cortisol, which raises your body temperature and your thirst. I recommend, you know, something like the Skoda Happy Hounds playlist to play in the car to jolly the drivers along, the people along. You can all of us sing along and keep your dog in a happy mood, but only after lots of careful, incremental desensitization in the car. And never leave your dog in a parked hot car even with the windows open, because the temperatures go into the 40 degrees, and at that point it is fatal for your dog.
Yeah. I mean, people really should know that lesson by now, but I know it happens every single year, doesn't it? Happens every year. Yeah. Look, it's barbecue season. It's barbecue weather. What's the general rules and regs for, you know, for a barbecue and dogs and things? Do you let them have a bit of burger, a bit of sausage, or should you not bother at all?
Well, the worry is if you give them a bit of burger or sausage, they're going to come back for more. And the problem is that will encourage them to scavenge and sniff around. And, you know, a bit of burger, a bit of sausage is absolutely fine for your dog. But it's if it's got, you know, chicken bones, you know, cooked chicken bones, often on a barbecue, fatal. You know, they splinter and they get stuck in your dog's throat. So similarly, if you're out on a picnic, you know, bear in mind the dogs that are around, you know, please, you know, pick up your litter. Don't leave chicken bones lying around or a bit of potato salad stuck on a plastic fork. I've known dogs eat a plastic fork. And, you know, it's not fair. It's about live and let live and letting everyone really enjoy this sudden summer burst of weather.
Can you tell us a bit more about Mr. Binks, please? Because he's being very well behaved, which would make sense, really bearing in mind your job.
Oh, thank you. Well, he is an English toy terrier. He's a British vulnerable breed, so he's actually facing extinction because not many people actually know he even exists. He's 11, I know, and he's a rehome. So he was looking for a forever home, and yeah, I hope I've given him the best home possible. He's looking forward to a little strut around the park shortly. I can tell you he loves the sun, but we do it in moderation because I know he can overheat, because actually black dogs will absorb the heat quicker than a white dog. So, you know, because of the coat colour. So we have to be very careful of Mr. Binks. So you can add a bit of sunscreen, add a little cool vest to the scenario today, maybe a cool mat when you travel in the car, but make sure your dog doesn't chew it.
Yeah, it's all about being prepared. I'm sure he's a very, very happy boy. Anna, Mr. Binks, thank you both very much indeed. Good to see you.
Thank you, Anna and Mr. Binks. Oh, he's very cute.
Very sweet. But you know what? Like, it's all sensible advice, that.
Yep, very good advice.
Sensible advice. Just be careful. Keep an eye on your loved furry one. And there you go.
And it's OK if they eat grass. I learnt something there.
Yeah.
It's OK if they eat grass, but not hemlock. Keep them away from hemlock.
Yeah. It's everywhere. I hadn't realised hemlock was...
Oh, it is everywhere.
It is just every hedge.
Now, get ready for one of the richest games in football as Championship sides Coventry and Luton battle it out at Wembley for a place in the Premier League. That's next. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie at 9:38, and we're heading off to a festival later, aren't we?
Yes, we are, yeah. You've got work in the morning, so you've got to be sensible.
So I'm going to be out raving tonight because it is festival season. I'm going to be really going for it. Listening to some popular music combos.
And like Antarctic Monkeys.
Oh, yes.
Which we're about to hear about. Because with inflation still high, some music fans will be looking to save a few pennies. Of course, cost of living crisis. And festival tickets can cost upwards of hundreds of pounds.
Yeah, so how about a cheapy alternative? Where our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has been speaking to music lovers at Glaston Budget in Leicestershire.
In the East Midlands, the rhythm of the countryside quickens to the thumping heartbeat of a party.
It is very nearly the start of the Summer Music Festival season. We're at the end of May, but all of these people are getting in the mood here at Glaston Budget. We're right in the heart of Leicestershire. It's a tribute band music festival. It costs a little bit less than some of those big music festivals, and that's why loads of people are coming here to spend their bank holiday in this way.
Reaching its 19th year, Glaston Budget returns at exactly the right time. Sky-high inflation is forcing music fans to abandon dreams of top-tier festivals.
Well, the weather's great for it. So
yeah, been before?
A couple of years ago.
Events manager John O says that Glaston Budget is trying to make festivals a reality for everyone.
There is massive cost infrastructure for a festival for us, but we really try and keep as close as possible to that to keep the prices as low as possible.
Stuart's been on the circuit for decades, but wonders how this season will play out.
Maybe there might be a change in people's habits, you know, spending cash, maybe trying to conserve a little bit more. And I wouldn't blame them if they did, but all of our expenses have gone up.
Only a few hundred people showed up for the first Budget Festival in 2005. Now 15,000 are expected over the bank holiday. Many have been before.
It works because it's cheap and it's a whole weekend.
We get the tickets in the early bird, so they're cheaper anyway.
It is really good value, but the bands are really good.
It's only camping, but some have brought enough gear to stay for weeks.
What haven't I brought? Literally everything.
Beer, tent, sleeping bag, money.
I have actually just had my hip resurfaced, so perhaps I shouldn't be doing this, but I am doing it anyway, so yeah.
Most of the acts are tribute bands like Antarctic Monkeys and Motor Headache, clever puns for crisp-sounding copies. This is Jack's second year here, performing as Ed Sheeran.
Being an Ed Sheeran act, obviously we've got like loads of hits to play, and just have one big sing-along. That's the idea, just have one big messy sing-along.
Before the pandemic, around 5 million Brits were partying at music festivals. That number will likely drop while prices are high. But smaller music festivals may be catching those that can't bear a summer without one. Will Hollis, GB News in Leicestershire.
Well, I hope they have a
go.
lovely time.
Yeah, well, at least they've got nice weather. It's not going to turn into a mud bath and all that sort of thing. They can go and see the Antarctic Monkeys and... What was the Ed Sheeran... he didn't get his... He must have a catchy, clever name.
There was another one, yeah.
Ned Sheeran or something like that. It'll be that sort of thing.
But we did say he looks more like Lewis Capaldi than he does Ed Sheeran, so we might want to rethink that.
Yeah, but maybe he sounds like Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, maybe you can rethink that as well. Train himself.
Shape of My Heart, is that an Ed Sheeran song?
Shape of You, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Well, almost. Close
try
enough.
to get down with the kids.
Oh, very good,
Oh.
very good. We were just looking at some photos in one of the papers of Florence Pugh, and Steve went, now, is that the same Florence as Florence and the Machine? No,
That's a group, apparently.
That's
it's the only Florence I've heard of.
Group.
And so, no, she's an actress, is she?
She's an actress, a very good one at that.
There you go.
You should look at her work.
She's wearing a dress in the papers with a sheer dress, nothing underneath.
He didn't like that, did
I think
you?
it's disgraceful, actually. What's the
like
world?
that at all.
What is the world coming to?
Well, she's a very talented actress.
But then you get loads of people, and you've all been emailing in saying, "Oh no, couldn't do mixed sex wards." Well, you'd have a choice walking about with that, with no underwear on, showing everything to the world. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that look either, to be honest. But she is a very good actress, and no, she's not in Florence and the Machine.
Call me old-fashioned.
It is a bit much.
It's a bit much.
Especially for this time in the morning.
It's
for
only
you,
Saturday
just
morning.
Opening a paper and...
Lynn in Milton Keynes, good morning to you. She says, good morning to you both. As Brucey... Oh, Brucey.
Brucey.
Oh, because it's spelt like that. I wondered... Oh, Brucey, as in Brucey Bonus, used to say, you're my favourite. Always lovely to be with you both in the morning. Thank you very much, Lynn.
See, I took Bruce as Bruce Forsyth.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Brucey Bonus.
Bonus? Who's Bonus?
No. That's what you say. You used to get a Brucey Bonus.
Oh, Brucey Bonus. Oh,
play your
I
cards
thought you were
right.
saying his surname was Bonus. I was like, I've got the wrong end of the stick. I thought it was Bruce Forsyth. Anyway, back in the room. Linda says, good morning, Stephen.
Oh, just
morning,
me.
Stephen. Just to you.
Just to me.
It's addressed to you.
Thanks, Linda.
I believe Rishi Sunak should be spending more time on solving the migrant issue than wasting time on AI.
Yeah, I understand that. I think you've got to do both, though. You can't just do one job at a time. You've got to multitask.
Got to multitask in this world.
I think that's the reality of it all. Rose says, Ellie and Stephen, you get first shout there.
Thanks, Rose.
It says, we're fabulous, apparently. Oh, thank you very much. I should leave it there, shouldn't I? It's so uplifting watching and listening to them. Great teamwork. That's from Rose, who's holidaying in Cumbria. Oh, whereabouts?
Oh, your neck of the woods.
Yeah, lovely. I hope you're having a lovely time up there. It'll be the best place in the world to be when the weather's nice.
Yeah, I hope the weather is good for you this weekend. I think it's meant to be, so enjoy.
Yes,
and
yes.
Paul says, when people don't quite understand what is meant by the chemistry between TV presenters, then they just need to watch Stephen and Ellie. Well, thanks very much, Paul. They come across as genuinely lovely people, and the love and respect between them is a joy to watch. Great show, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah, very talented actors. Very.
Little do you know what goes on.
Oh, it's terrible.
Behind the scenes.
It's terrible. She spends the entire commercial breaks going, doll.
Yeah, very annoying.
No, it's not annoying. It's lovely.
It's like a little...
You're a sweetheart, though I'd never admit that to your face.
No, you never would.
No.
Never, ever would.
No, got to keep her in a place.
And Mike's made a suggestion this morning. Hi, guys. What about replacing the political parties with AI? Can't do any worse.
But then they'd all agree with each other, wouldn't they? There'd be one sort of algorithm. Mind you, but that might work.
That might work.
Yeah.
Maybe,
peace. Mike. Maybe that, yeah. Mind you, then you can't argue against the machine, though. If you disagree with it, you can't vote them out, can you?
Then you could have a dictatorship. Oh, I mean, this is what we mean. It just snowballs, doesn't it? It gets...
Just snowball.
And it's way ahead.
Next thing you know, we're going to have an artificial Prime Minister.
Exactly.
No, I think we've had one before. There you go. It wouldn't be the first time.
Oh, dear. Well, keep the views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com, our new email address.
Sounded like Sid James this morning. I've got to sort out my laugh. Anyway.
I like your laugh. It's better than my silent kind of seal. That's all I can do. Anyway, we'll move on. The richest game in world football is taking place today, which sees Coventry and Luton meet at Wembley for a place in the Premier League.
Yes, reaching that promised land would bring in a huge injection of cash. Now, could be anywhere from... Some people are saying £100 million. Paul Coyte says it could be up to £1 billion. As well as a chance to play against some of the world's best, of course.
Well, our reporter Jack Carson spoke to some fans this week about the biggest domestic game in the calendar.
The city of Coventry has a rich and proud history. From the Blitz to manufacturing and, of course, its football club.
And here are the men from Coventry.
After success in the Championship this season and winning a spot in the playoffs, the Sky Blues beat Middlesbrough over 2 games to face Luton Town at Wembley for a spot in the Premier League. But for the last few years, the club hasn't had an easy ride, as Coventry fan Ian Davidson explains.
The last few years, we came out of the Premier League after 34 years. We then had 10, 11 years in the Championship, and then we got relegated. And everybody thought it was going to be a one-season tour of League One. That didn't happen. We went into things like administration. We had 10-point deductions. We ended up going down to League 2, and the recovery through Mark Robbins and the phenomenal support of the fans has just been amazing over the last 5-6 years.
Through television deals, English football has expanded into homes across the world, and Norwegian Sky Blue fan Jorg Nannestad started supporting the club thanks to his mother.
My mother, she promised that she should buy me football shirts. 2 guys from England started importing the Admiral football shirts to Norway, and had a little store in the center of Oslo. And my mother went in and she bought, as she said, the prettiest shirt in the shop, and that was Coventry. And since then, it has been Coventry. I think it will be a close race, but 1-0 Coventry.
Last year, Coventry generated £18 million from ticket sales, commercial arrangements and TV. If they go up to the Premier League, that could rise to more than £130 million. But it's not just on the Wembley pitch where Coventry could seal financial security. Solihull is a maritime business based in the city that recently won the King's Award for Enterprise with its ultrasonic anti-fouling system. Their environmental, social and governance director, Darren Jones, says promotion for the football club is good for business at home and abroad.
When you go to Singapore or Sweden and you sound from Coventry and they say, oh wow, we've seen you in the Premiership, that connection, that human connection really helps sell. Just the brand recognition of having your city associated with the Premiership, the biggest league in the world, watched by billions, is huge. So if we're looking at inward investment, even if we're just looking at visitor numbers to the city, once it's a Premiership stadium, it really does take on an international dimension. Yes, it's been an Olympic stadium before, but it can be even more. It brings people to the city and it brings attention to the city, and that just really helps with business.
The heights of England's top tier awaits either Coventry or Luton today, but only one can come away from Wembley with a spot in the Premier League. Jack Carson, GB News.
Well, it's exciting stuff. If you're heading to Wembley today, let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com. Paul Coyte is here. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm excited as well. I'm very excited. I always love the Championship playoff final. Always exciting. Who's going to get to the Premier League? And as we just saw, you know, two teams that are unexpected, Coventry and Luton Town.
Yeah, I sort of get the sense that you've got your money on Luton, or you're sort of rather hoping Luton gets it.
You know what? I always loved Eric Morecambe. So Eric Morecambe was a huge... Did you know that? No. Eric Morecambe was a huge Luton Town fan.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I mean, he was from up north. And
well, obviously, he was from Morecambe.
Well, actually, he was from Eric Bartholomew, from Morecambe, and that's what... Yeah. So he became a huge Luton Town fan. I think it was when they moved to Harpenden, and his son, Gary, they were looking for a team. See, it's a difficult thing. You can't really just adopt a team like that. It's because it's usually, you know, you're either born with it, or we've heard the other reason there from the Coventry fan there from Scandinavia, that particularly like the shirt.
It's a very pretty shirt.
A very pretty shirt. So there's different reasons. So with Eric Morecambe, they were living in the area and thinking, well, who should we go with? Let's go with Luton, because it's down the road. He then started going to Luton, became a director of Luton Town Football Club. And even, I'll tell you another one, there's a phrase that I'm sure Ellie will remember, one of the old catchphrases from Morecambe and Wise. And what the fans would actually shout when he was there, what do you think of it so far? And he'd go, rubbish, that's it. So that was often there. So Eric Morecambe is obviously no longer with us, but huge Coventry fan. And
Luton fan.
And Luton fan, of course.
Oh,
I'd be sent to Coventry for making such a comment.
You would.
I would.
You would. That was very tight.
Huge Luton fan over the years.
Who else is a big fan?
Sir Alistair Cook.
Yes.
Sir Alistair Cook, the cricketer. Right. He's a huge Luton fan as well. And Cerys Matthews, singer from Catatonia.
Yeah.
Welsh, you know, I don't know why. I think it's because of her husband who's a big Luton fan.
Right.
When it comes to Coventry, now, Christian Horner is... Are you familiar with the work of Christian? Or more so with his wife, Jerry?
Yes, I was about to say. Jerry's husband.
Oh, I see. He's Ginger Spice.
Exactly. So he
Mr. Ginger Spice.
runs Red Bull, the racing team. He's over in Monaco at the moment for the Monte Carlo, for the Monaco Grand Prix. So he's a big Coventry fan. Tom Grennan, the musical artiste, is a huge...
No, I don't know who
No,
that
you
is.
know him.
Do I?
Yeah, he's
You
big
do.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
How does he... You know he knows.
Well, you don't think you do, but I'll fill you in.
Tom Grennan.
I'll catch you up after.
But Tom Grennan, though, huge Coventry fan, and what he's done is that there's a fan from Argentina. Now, he heard a story, you're going to Google Tom Grennan now.
I am.
So there's a huge fan in Argentina and who got into Coventry City through playing FIFA. So Tom Grennan had seen him on social media, and this guy, Louty his name is, and he'd put on social media, can't afford to get over to support the Sky Blues. You know, it's very bizarre that it's from Argentina, and I might have to sell my car. Tom Grennan saw this and has said, I will pay for your ticket.
Oh.
Now, Tom Grennan can't go because he's got a festival, but he's paying for his ticket to fly over, and he'll be watching the game today as well.
He should spend a bit of money on a razor. He's a bit scruffy.
Do you think so?
He's a bit scruffy looking.
He's got a curly mop,
he's
hasn't
got a
he?
curly
on top of
mop.
his
He
head.
is a curly mop-top superstar, so yeah. But loves Coventry City.
Look, I hate to say it, we're getting a bit tight here.
Are we again? Okay.
Yeah. Can we talk about The Rock?
Yeah, let's talk about The Rock. Right. Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson.
Southend United.
Southend.
I mean, why Southend?
It's sort of your manor, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's not far
My
from
neck
you.
of the woods, yeah.
Yeah,
Why
it's
would
from
you be interested
Southend.
in Southend?
Well, Southend's a lovely place, firstly, we'd just like to say, but Southend have got a football team that are not doing very well. They've dropped into the National League and it's not looking very good and they're being sold, and there's a company that's coming to buy them that also happens to be owned by Ray Winston, and they are now telling this film company, maybe you could make a film about the rise of Southend after what happened with Wrexham. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, owns them. There's the link.
Perfect.
Lovely. Great storytelling.
Coity, thank you very much indeed. That is it from us, but don't go anywhere because Esther and Phil are up next with Saturday Morning. I'm back tomorrow. You're back on Monday.
Monday, for 7 days. Please keep me company.
Morning, this is your latest weather update for GB News from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin and the weather looks pretty good this weekend if you like it dry and fine. It will turn a little cooler over the next couple of days and some of the beaches will be a little fresh, but generally we've got high pressure controlling things, bringing a lot of dry and pretty sunny weather too. Now, there is this weather front pushing into northern Scotland, so a fairly drab start to the weekend here. A little bit of rain just trickling at the moment down across the Highlands. That's tending to fizzle out as it sinks southwards, so central belt, eastern Scotland, mostly dry, just clouding over a little. For much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells. There's a bit of a breeze on some coasts, bringing a fresher feel, and still a fairly brisk wind blowing over northern Scotland. But here, after a grey start, it may actually brighten up a bit this afternoon.